Oh, hi. You caught me hosting a show. What show? This show is called The Weekly Spinner Rack. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. My name is Chris, and I'll be your host tonight, as I am every night, because this is my channel. So it makes sense when you think about it. What are we here to do? We're here to talk about comics. And boy, I don't know about you guys, but it was a big week for me. These are just like the books that came out this week that I picked up. Many books. Uh it was just a really big week, and I didn't even get absolutely everything I intended to. Uh so wow. But you know what? If you do a show about comics, you can kind of justify buying a lot of comics. That's the secret. You just have to create a show about something you love, and then nobody can get mad at you for spending a lot of your money on it. More money than you make. Anyway, we've got some great news tonight, too. We're going to talk about comic book news. And when I say we, it's because I always interact with the lovely folks that are here in the live chat. Trust me, if you're watching this while it's archived, I appreciate you doing that as well. That really helps. And I think it's pretty interesting because then you get chapter breaks, which is also nice. Let me give some shout outs to folks that are here. Look at all these lovely folks. I'm going to just cycle through quickly so that I'm giving everybody acknowledgement. I appreciate you being here. It makes the show more interesting and more fun. Just a really big week for comics, though. Look at all these people. Lovely. Love to see new names and regular names. Yes, and like Owen's Reviews just said, Happy Canada Day to those of you watching in Canada. We could point to comic book characters from Canada, like Wolverine or Alpha Flight, but we should probably look to Canadian characters created by actual Canadians, right? Like a Captain Canuck, something like that. I don't know who else. I should look into that, see what other famous fictional characters in comic books have come from Canada. That would be interesting to look into because they've got a lot of interesting mythology there. They've got like Nelvana is an interesting character. They've got all sorts of interesting mythos and stuff that can be explored. What else? Before I get started with the news, there's been some good comic book shows and stuff like that out. Let's see. I think The Boys is a very entertaining season overall, but that some of the characters have side plots that just aren't as interesting. Like the stuff they're doing with Frenchie and Kamiko, and even to a degree Huey, it's okay in and of itself, but it isn't feeding into the main narrative that much. It seems so, apart from the general thrust of the season. But it is a good show. Let's see. No, this isn't specifically Ed Brubaker, but I did get it because it sort of does look like, just sort of, I don't know, crime comic type stuff with femme fatales. It feels like it's spinning its wheels. I wouldn't go that far. I still find it pretty darn interesting what is being done at Vought and the stuff that's going on with whatchamacallit, Annie January, Starlight. I like that stuff. But yeah, anyway. What else? Has anybody else checked out the Suicide Squad Isekai? It's a new anime made by Wit Studio, really good animation studio. It's on HBO. So if you've got like whatever they call that, like Max, is that what they call it now? Just Max. The first 3 episodes are up on that, and I only watched the first one, but the animation's really good. And I like some of the characterizations they've done with some of the characters. I don't know. So from just one episode, I was like, okay, this is promising. I'm going to try to watch the rest of it. Whoa. Sorry, my phone must have thought I said to start playing the show or something like that. That was annoying. Got some feedback. Anyway, yeah, it's different. I like what they've done with Clayface. He's presented as an actor, as several Clayfaces have been, and he just sort of acts like or references famous pop culture stuff. But it's not as like uh, inept and dumb as the version of Clayface in the Harley Quinn cartoon. So that's not bad. Anyway, it's an interesting take on Suicide Squad, where they go to an alternate dimension that's like fantasy, supernatural type stuff. What else? I feel like there was something else in comic book stuff that came out this week, but maybe not. I might just be thinking of more like Star Wars The Acolyte, which the first 2 episodes I was like, well, this is fine. It wasn't great, but I didn't think it was bad either. Episode 3 was this weird flashback episode that I wasn't super into, but then episode 4 was better. Episode 5, I loved it. I'll just say that some of the I won't spoil what happens in it. I'll just say that it's very action packed, and it's some of the best fight choreography I've seen in any Star Wars. I felt like each character had a methodology to their fighting style that made sense for them. There was a young character that's kind of shorter, and she would use lots of kicks, and I was like, okay, that makes sense. So anyway, I like it. Hold on, I'm just trying to like get the camera to focus. Someday I'll get a better camera. Anyway, yeah, the lights. Sometimes lightsaber fights, I only find interesting if it's like good character motivation, right? And there's a lot of motivation in this for why people will start to fight. But I don't want to spoil anything. But I actually really like it so far overall, because that episode 5 was pretty damn good. It's pretty damn good. It's not any sort of a brand, Rick. This is just a shirt I came across on Amazon at one point, and I just sort of like the style. I've never been able to identify what artist did this. I don't think it's based on anything. But anyway, sorry. I am using the Force to do a lot of this show. Tell you what, let's get into the news. Whoop. And there's some big G.I. Joe news this week, so I decided to throw in this gorgeous little thumbnail, an image of me. I 1 year ago, I made this sort of very cheap Secto Viper costume to appear in a comedy bit for my friend Brian's G.I. Joe channel. I was what's called a Secto Viper. They sort of guard the beaches of Cobra Island, and I went to the water and like just sort of acted like an annoying beach cop in it. Anyway, yeah, that's on HCC 788 if you were curious. But let's get into the news. We'll start with this. Skybound has so far been doing all sorts of stuff in the Energon universe. You know, we started with Void Rivals. We got the tremendously popular Transformers, and they've been doing G.I. Joe mini-series to build up that section, because G.I. Joe and Cobra haven't really fully formed yet. There was a Duke series and a Cobra Commander series. Now there is a Destro and a Scarlet series. But now we're getting an ongoing G.I. Joe title. And they, Skybound, Hasbro, Image, they're all, working on this together. They said that the ongoing series is going to launch November 13th. I predict that will sell very well, folks, because this whole Energon universe has definitely got some very loyal readers, and it's growing. It's still growing. So I've been enjoying it. It riffs on stuff we've seen in various G.I. Joe toys, cartoons, and comics, but this is a new continuity. And I like it so far. I really do. I like it more than I thought. This is the same creative team that started the sort of G.I. Joe stuff, as in writer Joshua Williamson and Tom Riley. They did the Duke series, which was the first one. They're going to do the ongoing, at least initially. Hopefully they do it for a while, because I thought that they were a great creative team. It also promises to introduce a new character. I believe that is likely this person, and the return of many classic favorites. So yeah, like we're starting to get the Crimson Twins and Bats and Stalker and CoverGirl, Clutch and Rock and Roll. Interestingly, Baroness is currently allied with the Joes. That is a new outfit for her. I hope we get a classified action figure of that. And I'm not 100% sure who this Cobra is. I've got a guess, but I'm not 100% sure. There was a Cobra called Blackout, and his sister Bombstrike joined the Joes. I sort of wonder if this is mixing those two together in a way. Alternately, she's got something close to a sniper rifle, so maybe that's some sort of redo of a character called Shooter. I'm not 100% sure. I know I'm going deep into the weeds for people that don't dig into the G.I. Joe lore, but something I've just been thinking about. But I like some of the decisions that they've made, knowing that like things will pay off later. Mercer was originally introduced in the toy line as a G.I. Joe who had formerly been a Viper. Well, with this starting from scratch, we can just start off with him working for Cobra. So that's kind of clever. I don't know who this new character is that looks like some sort of a U.S. Marshal. But I think that one of the things that really impresses me here is the fact that they still haven't leaned into into Snake Eyes. They could have definitely just... That's the most popular and best known G.I. Joe character is Snake Eyes. And you could have had like Snake Eyes from the beginning. So far, we haven't seen Snake Eyes at all. There's a lot of stories and mythology and stuff that you can do with Snake Eyes, but they've sort of been holding back on that element, and I give them props for that. That's something really big to hold on to. And they also hint at how this is connected, to Transformers and stuff. We see parts of maybe Megatron here and what looks like probably Hound. That's a pretty big Autobot character that would turn into a military Jeep. But that seems to be parts of Hound here. If this was a G.I. Joe vehicle, I'm nerdy enough to go like, that is the Vamp. Anyway. So, I know I talked a lot about that. What can I say, folks? I'm a big G.I. Joe fan, so I love talking about this. I'm excited to see an ongoing story. Let's see. They're definitely waiting for the right time to debut Snake Eyes. It'll be a big deal when they do. Snake Eyes is easily the most capable, ninja. I mean, he's the kind of guy that I feel like Snake Eyes would win in a fight against Captain America, because he would fight a little dirtier. He would. But anyway. I haven't read any of this yet, so pardon my ignorance, but the Energon universe is also the new Transformers universe, right? Yes, exactly right. It's just taking place in a shared continuity. I don't know how to describe it. Like the latest issue of Void Rivals, I'll talk about this tonight. It's got some new lore about Transformers that connects it to these sort of original characters, but we've seen Cybertronian technology in the G.I. Joe books used by different factions. It's cool. It's cool stuff. Cap is very noble, and he can work very hard not to kill people if he doesn't have to because of the super soldier serum. That gives him a big advantage. But there have been plenty of in-continuity stories where Captain America is also a soldier, and he's willing to kill terrorists if that's what he has to do to save lives. You know, like I remember an issue where he just picked up an Uzi on a flight tarmac and had to shoot a bunch of I want to say flag smashers goons to save citizens on an airplane. That Captain America doesn't have the no kill rule of Spider-Man and Superman and Batman. He just doesn't. Whenever he can, he won't kill, but he's willing to. He was trained as a soldier. You don't think so? I think Snake Eyes is dangerous and badass enough that he would be able to beat guys like Batman and Captain America, but that's my take. That's my take. I'm willing to go with any writer's well-justified story. He does, I agree. And I'm just saying that Snake Eyes would fight a little dirtier and trick Cap. That's all I'm saying. Moving on. I have really enjoyed Radiant Black and a lot of the titles connected to that, which are in a shared universe called Supermassive. One of the things I like most about this connected universe is that each comic book just tells its own story. And if they're going to do crossovers, they do them as things like this, a one-shot. So you don't have to buy any more titles than you want to. It has shared characters that might cameo, but it isn't like you have to read this issue, then this issue to get, you know, two parts of a story or an event or a crossover. I like how they've been doing that. But there's a new one coming out. This issue, it's called, sorry, I just realized, it's called the Massive Verse, and the comic is called Supermassive. So whatever, you know, I think hopefully you get what I'm talking about. It's coming out July 24th. So, yeah, later this month. It's going to be 50 pages, and it's going to cover what the other superheroes in this shared world have been doing, while in Radiant Black, there's been this ongoing big story of an alien invasion, something called the Catalyst War. And that's very much Radiant Black's story, but it's big in scope, big enough that it's affecting the world. So we're getting this one shot where we get to see what some of the other heroes were doing during that, which makes sense. We're going to get Radiant Red, Dead Lucky, Rogue Sun, Inferno Girl Red, and Shift, who's sort of a bad guy, sort of an anti-villain. So, and the team on this is the people that work on the books. Kyle Higgins, Melissa Flores, Ryan Parrott, and Matt Groom, as well as artist Stefano Simeone. Should be fun. I guess the other heroes only have one timeline since Black isn't part of their stories. Yes, I'm sure this was tricky to coordinate, because if you aren't reading, during this Catalyst War, we're seeing two separate timelines every month. And we don't know if either of them will become the true timeline or if they'll somehow connect back together at some point. There's some weird time travel stuff involved with these aliens, and I like how unexpected it is. I really don't know exactly how this story could end, which I enjoy. You're waiting for Radiant Plaid. Radiant Pink is also confirmed to appear. Got it. I did not know that. That's helpful to know, though. Yeah. I think it'll be fun is all, so putting it on people's radar. Well, the Green Lantern series, that is a show that has been in development for many, many years, going all the way back to when, like, the Arrowverse was still a big thing at the CW, and the guy that oversaw all of that, the producer, was Greg Berlanti, and he got a show about Green Lantern started at HBO. And at the time, that was going to be following Guy Gardner and I think Alan Scott. I can't quite remember, but it's been in development forever. Hey, it's my sister. Thanks for joining in, Gene. Appreciate it. It has been going through lots and lots of permutations, but HBO is finally moving forward with it, and it's different than what was originally pitched. Greg Berlanti is no longer part of this. HBO announced this week they've given a full series order. It's going to be an 8-episode live-action TV show, and they're calling it Lanterns, obviously based off Green Lantern, but it's called Lanterns, plural. It is live action. It's set in the new DCU, and they say that it's going to be a terrestrial-based investigation story. So while they'll have their powers, it isn't going to be Green Lantern. Sometimes he goes into space and fights aliens and stuff like that. And sometimes he fights stuff that's going on here on Earth. Well, this one is set here on Earth. And I'm sure some of that is to keep the budget manageable. Yes, this is absolutely James Gunn affiliated, just to be clear. Thank you. Appreciate that. Good day. Did I say that perfectly? So, this show is going to feature both Jon Stewart and Hal Jordan. Pretty, I would say, the two biggest and best known Green Lanterns, of which there have been many, but those are the two biggest ones. The show, who's it by? We've got Chris Mundy, who was a showrunner and writer on Ozark. I think he picked up something like 5 Emmys on that. And also for HBO, he was recently the showrunner of the last season of True Detective. That's all crime-based and very grounded, and I think that that's very intentional why they must have chosen him for this type of story. But also involved as producers and writers, Damon Lindelof, probably best known for Lost. He's worked on a lot of stuff. For HBO, he worked on that Watchmen TV show. And Tom King from the world of comics. Tom King is also going to be involved as a writer. The Tom King thing is the one that I'm probably most excited about to have his voice in there. Yes, I mentioned that earlier. Happy Canada Day, Randy. Nice to see you. Happy Canada Day to you specifically. Let me know if you are aware of any famous comic book characters originally from Canadians in Canada. I'm trying to think. Very unlikely to shelve it, as it hasn't even been made yet. But they are announcing it. There's some, big names behind it. I think that, they're going to do it. Let's see. I wonder if they're tracking a Red Lantern. Jeff Johns had Atrocitus roaming around California murdering people. He could be the villain. Yeah, maybe. Black Hand. But could be another option. Or just uncovering some sort of mythology, about, say, the Lanterns or the Manhunters or the Guardians. Who knows? Who knows? Yeah, I hope so. I think that Green Lantern, that's one of the trickier nuts to crack for either TV or movies, because works well as a comic book. Probably would work great as an animated show, even if it was, like, say, still set in the DCU. But, as far as, I don't know, like that Ryan Reynolds live action movie was just not very good, in my opinion. Just not very good at all. Yeah. Will he be vulnerable to wood? Probably not. That was the original Green Lantern, Alan Scott, but these, who knows? Will they have a weakness to yellow? Or is that also out of date? Do they not need a weakness? It's that Green Lantern can potentially be so powerful. And I think you have the same trouble with, like, Green Lantern that you do with characters like Thor and Doctor Strange, where you want some of their adventures to take place in faraway, fantastical realms. But you need some of the stories to take place in something much more recognizable, where they're saving, people on Earth and being actual heroes. So it's very tricky to find that balance of, how much space stuff versus how much Earth stuff. Because if you can easily go too far one way or the other, or you can just try to do way too much with one story. I would argue that the first movie with Ryan Reynolds, tried to do too much of both, and it was just messy. It was just all over the place. Anyway, I think that's all I've got to say about the Green Lantern show. Hopefully it's good. I do like Tom King a lot. I liked the first 4 seasons of Ozark. I did not love the final season, unfortunately. Not that I'll say it's a total disaster, but it wasn't satisfying in the same way that, say, Breaking Bad was. Well, just to be clear, Jamilin, I looked into that and I was like, oh, does this art reflect any sort of vision for the show? This was existing just DC art that has been used in promo imagery because they don't have anything else to go on. So I don't think it necessarily reflects any of the concepts of the show. Because I agree, like seeing Jon Stewart with this yellow, you'd be like, oh, does he have a yellow ring? I don't think that this image should necessarily represent any ideas of what we should expect out of the story. I feel like it's honestly unlikely that they'll introduce this as a big element. Lindelof is hit and miss for me. He has done some stuff that I respect, and he's done some stuff where I just don't connect with the story at all. What was the Alien movie that he wrote? I just felt like the characters would be like, they'd have certain personality traits in one scene and then completely different in another. He had some scientists that land on this alien planet and they are terrified of, running into, alien life or something. So they start heading back to their ship and they come across this huge Cobra-like monster, and they just all of a sudden get so fascinated they want to take pictures and get up close, and you're like, I thought you were terrified of stuff a second ago. So I don't know. I never saw Leftovers, but some of my friends really like that one. So anyway, I just sort of feel like for me, he's hit and miss. Prometheus, right? Thank you for the reminder. I didn't like Prometheus very much, and I like the alien world to be in. I'll even say like 3 and 4 for the movies I can enjoy for what they are. It's Prometheus is the one I'm talking about. I don't know. But honestly, then the follow-up, which had way more alien stuff, and again, they're both directed by the director of the first Alien movie, so I expected so much more. But the follow-up one I also didn't like. I can't even remember what it's called. It doesn't matter. Well, he started to write that Ultimate Hulk versus Wolverine comic. Didn't he never finish it? I don't think he ever finished that. Because I remember the first issue had a huge, all the news about that comic was it showed the Hulk literally ripping Wolverine in half in the Ultimate Universe. And then it never got finished. Right, Ridley Scott. Thank God you guys are here, because boy, am I bad at remembering names. Alien Covenant was the sequel to Prometheus, all done by Ridley Scott, who I think Ridley Scott is generally very, very good. I'm more hopeful for Romulus being good. I've liked the stuff Fede Alvarez has done, and I think that they're just sort of keeping it kind of simple and going more for tone over building mythology. But we really went down a rabbit hole. But then again, it's by Damon Lindelof, and it's space stuff, which Lanterns could be. We'll see. Batman Wayne Family Adventures is a tremendously popular collaboration between DC and WEBTOON. And it's a big deal that it is coming back for more. Specifically, it's returning for a 3rd season. It'll have 50, they call them episodes. It's a bunch of comics with new ones coming out every Thursday. If you don't know exactly what it is Eisner nominated. It's about Batman and basically all of his sidekicks, and they all live at home with him and Alfred. So, you've got Dick Grayson, you've got Jason Todd, you have Tim Drake, Damian Wayne, Stephanie Brown, Cassandra Cain, let's see, Barbara Gordon, Duke Thomas, and Alfred. So it has some superhero stuff, but it focuses a little bit more on family drama at home. It's an all ages type thing, but it looks nice. People like it a lot, so good for them. I did have a couple Aliens toys in the 90s, actually. I had a couple of those. Each alien was sort of based on a different animal, and then they'd have little gimmicks. Yeah. Alfred finally gets a chance to relax. Yes. Yes. It's cute. The writer is the same one, and artist, same as it's been from the beginning. CRC Bloom writes, artist Starbright draws, and the big thing they're doing for season 3 is they're bringing in the Joker as a threat across all 50 episodes. And I know that sounds standard, but this is a much different type of story than usual. It focuses more on home life and stuff like that. Anyway, it's cute. It's all ages. You know, sign up for a WEBTOON account and you can basically read each episode each week for free. I've got some, I'll explain this imagery in just a second, but a trailer for what you see up here in the top left, Batman Caped Crusader. It's a new animated series, very much not all ages, more aimed at adults. We got a trailer this week for it. So it's coming out on Amazon Prime, and the show itself launches August 1st. So we've got 1 month until we get Batman Caped Crusader. It has already been picked up by Amazon for 2 seasons. I don't know if they'll go beyond that, but they picked up the first 2 seasons all at once. Executive producers on this, a lot of great talent. Ed Brubaker, yes, please. His stuff that he did on like the Gotham City Police, great comic, great crime writer. Matt Reeves, director of the latest live-action Batman movie. J.J. Abrams, and returning from Batman the Animated Series in the 90s, very acclaimed, Bruce Timm is working on it. So a new continuity, very reminiscent in some ways of that 90s Batman Animated Series, because it seems like it takes place in sort of an older time period. You know, the cars and the Art Deco buildings and just like the color tone, very, very much in keeping with that. But they're not drawn the same way. They've got different voice actors, so it isn't like a continuation, really. Hey, Andy, good to see you. I'm also pretty excited. This has been like taking forever for this show to get out, people, because originally this was going to be on Cartoon Network, Adult Swim, I think. So it's been in the works for quite a while. I don't know how that fell apart, but Amazon picked it up and Amazon is going to be airing it. But yeah. Yes, Greg Rucka, who co-wrote Gotham Central with Brubaker, is writing the 2nd episode of season 1. I didn't know that. I will agree. That is a fun fact. Some of the facts we share here on this show, not fun. They're just facts. But that is a fun fact. And J.M. DeMatteis is writing on season 2. I love it when these shows bring in the comic book writers. They will all insert something from that's important in the comics. They will, that otherwise gets overlooked, and that kind of stuff tends to be the best stuff to build on. That's really cool to hear that they're bringing in those people as writers. Oh, it definitely looks like 1940s film noir stuff. It definitely does, and I dig that. It gives it all a vibe, and I think it de-escalates how I think a lot of modern crime and thriller is much trickier to write than it was 30 years ago. What do I mean? I really mean cell phones. Cell phones connect us all to just information and each other in a way that means, you know, if you're in an emergency, you can call for help or call for information. Back in, like, say, the 80s, going into the 90s, if you had a procedural of some sort, it was very easy to isolate a character and have them in a dangerous situation where for some reason they couldn't easily get to, say, a payphone or a public phone or something like that. And cell phones really like make you have to think as a writer for how to get people into dangerous situations in a very different way. So anyway. Yeah, they do have different takes on Renee Montoya and Alfred. No, I don't think J.M. DeMatteis passed away. No. He was posting at least yesterday on Twitter and stuff. Let me go back to this news. Here's some of the cast. Not all of it, but Hamish Linklater is Batman in this. Christina Ricci is playing Catwoman, and she's absolutely wearing a costume like the original Catwoman, more of a dress. And Diedrich Bader, he has played Batman on the Brave and the Bold cartoon, but he's involved in this one as Two-Face. And I think that's great because he's always seemed to have a lot of respect and love for Batman. So why do I have these three pictures here? Well, in the top left, this is a picture from the trailer of Batman and Alfred looking at a map of Gotham. Look specifically at these rivers and this, and you'll realize it is the same map that on the 60s show they always looked at. And if you're curious what that really is, it was always a map of St. Louis. Just look at this river if you need to see like how it all matches up. But yeah, like this is all so they're just pulling something deep from Batman lore that was introduced on the old TV show, and I just respect that. I think that's fun. Yeah. Not wearing a cat head, still wearing sort of her cowl with cat ears as compared to like a cat mask, but she's wearing a dress. Yeah, St. Louis. Don't know why they chose that for the 60s Batman show, but it definitely is a map of St. Louis. And, somebody had to make a decision of what kind of a map to draw for Gotham. And you would think, okay, they'll look at, Chicago or New York or something, or just make something up. But no, they just pulled the same map. And I get a kick out of that decision. Like you can even see these little green areas like correspond to each other. So just a funny little reference. I really don't know why they did that, but I kind of love them for it. It does seem like an inspired pick, and good for Christina Ricci for having a bit of a career comeback in the last few years, showing up on stuff like Wednesday, getting voice work like this. I've always liked Christina Ricci, but she hit it big as like sort of a child actress going into like, her early 20s, and then wasn't seen a whole lot for a while. But she's always, I think, been a pretty good actress. All right, moving on. Just want to talk about something weird. Kingdom Come is apparently getting a documentary, as in the comic book Kingdom Come. So Alex Ross tweeted this week. He said that a documentary is coming based on his 1996 series that he did with Mark Waid. Wouldn't have expected that. Popverse had a news article on this, and they said that there's going to be more details coming out about this documentary this month, July, before San Diego Comic-Con. Don't know what they're basing that on, but okay. And no word yet on whether this is an official Warner Brothers production or not, but they have been picking up documentaries that were like independently made. There was one made about Christopher Reeve, and Warner Brothers picked that up to be the distributor and like give them the official license and everything, like which helps with branding. Because, you could make a documentary about these subjects just like I make videos about them. But I couldn't, say, put an ad in a newspaper for Comic Tropes using like the Superman logo. That's not something I can do. Anyway, I hope it's interesting. I think that there's a lot that you could break down about Kingdom Come. I made an episode about it, but you could go into so much more detail, especially if you can talk to all the people that were involved, including, like editors and stuff like that. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think that this is like a film documentary as compared to a YouTube one, but we'll see. We'll see. If it ends up on any sort of streaming service that you can get, that would be lovely. Tubi actually has several sort of more obscure comic book documentaries if you want to dig in. And if you folks don't know, Tubi is free. It's the only thing you have to do is just create a free account if you want to be able to see R-rated movies. They've got so much stuff on there, folks. Tubi is really actually quite good. The reason it's free, there are the occasional ad. As somebody that grew up watching regular TV, not even cable, I don't mind that much if I can get all sorts of weird stuff that I can't get anywhere else for free. It's kind of nice. The Image Comics documentary are my favorite. There's a good one about them. I forget the name of it, but yeah, I agree. Tubi is not porn. Tubi is just an app. Tubi has like not just like weird stuff. It's like it's got old stuff and it's got foreign stuff. You can find, Italian action movies, and you can find Japanese Sentai shows, and you can find classic Doctor Who from England. So the Tubi has all sorts of weird stuff. It's great. Yeah, Dave Stevens documentary. I think that one also might be on Tubi, actually. Anyway, so I talk it up a lot. Trust me, Jim and I over on still on this channel, but we do the show Trash Movie Bonanza. By the way, a new episode is up this week. We have watched so many of the movies that we watch on Tubi. It has just like been fantastic for that. Anyway. Yes. It is a lot like an independent video store. You go there and you can browse for a long time and you'll find much more obscure stuff than you generally do on, say, Netflix or Amazon Prime and stuff like that. Things like that. Anyway. I know I went down another tangent there. I like that service. This one surprised me a little. I don't know where it's going. This is the beginning of something that's probably bigger news that we will know more about by the end of this month. So, no, I didn't ditch comic tropes for Trash Movie Bonanza. Trash Movie Bonanza is a super small lift. It basically just means once every 2 weeks, Jim and I get on, a call for about an hour and a half. That's the only amount of time it really takes from me. I'm plugging away very hard on comic tropes. I've already recorded the next episode. I'm editing it now. So let's talk about Boom, because their president of publishing left this week, and he's been with them for a long time. So, according to Bleeding Cool, Boom Studios president of publishing and marketing, Philip Sablik, and I might be mispronouncing his name. I'm sorry, Philip. He's handed in his resignation after a decade with the company. And you're like, has Boom even been around a decade? Yeah, they definitely have. He's been with them for a very long time. They also reported, Bleeding Cool, this is Rich Johnston, but he tends to have good feelers and stuff, but he says that Sablik may be working on something new with Jamie S. Rich. And we reported, I think just last week, that he just resigned as IDW's editor-in-chief. Those are two big executives in comics resigning at the same time. It does stand to reason that there's a possibility they could be putting something new together. They definitely would have a lot of contacts, both of them. We'll see. Let's see. Some of the things that Philip Sablik accomplished, because I was like, 10 years, let me see. He tripled Boom's market share from when he started. That helped get them into premier status at Diamond. And he oversaw, getting the right talent together and approving books, franchises like Berserker, Something is Killing the Children. That's a big one. And then all sorts of interesting licensed stuff. Dune, Buffy, Power Rangers. I think they have Firefly. They've got some interesting licensed materials there. So, yeah. I know. Yeah, it does feel like that's a possibility, and it feels very real. Yeah, they might have raised $30 to buy Valiant. That's definitely a um maybe a new publisher, but maybe these days, who knows? Like could it be more of like a production company that's getting talent involved in Hollywood? I don't know anymore. I don't know. Yeah, I think that they're established enough that they should be able to keep moving forward. I'm curious though to see what happens with both Philip and Jamie. I guess it could be a web thing. There's a lot of ways it could go. It seems like from their experience that if they are working together, yeah, maybe a comic book publisher, but I don't know. I don't know. I've got something that's somewhat related. Let me keep going. Just some sort of comics Netflix drama. I'll sort of label it as. So to start with, I'm talking about David Steinberger and Chip Mosier. They are the guys behind Distillery, but originally they were the guys behind Comixology. David was the co-founder, former CEO of Comixology. Chip was the former Comixology head of content. They were the guys that sold Comixology to Amazon. And then eventually they formed Distillery, which has been putting out some good stuff. I wondered about that too, Andy, because I was like, yeah, that was interesting, wasn't it? To see Scott Dunbier from IDW also sort of leave recently. But Scott could easily transition more into, say, original art dealing or something like that because of his background. I don't know. No, Distillery is not movie Blu-ray people. Distillery, spelled this way, publishes comics. Hold on, I'm sure I've got an example of one nearby. Just give me a minute to look. Where don't I have a Distillery book somewhere? Yep. Okay, here's one. They've got a lot of top tier talent, to be clear. They've got a lot of big names. This one's Brian Azzarello and Eduardo Risso, the guys behind 100 Bullets, pretty popular book. This is a Western. So they printed like oversize. Here's the size of like a regular floppy comic. And I'll compare that to, I'm going to take this off so you can see it a little better. So Distillery publishes it a little bigger. It's a little thicker. It's about the size. It's typically like 48 pages instead of 22. So it's like two comics at once. It's about $10. And they also have this thing like where after they've sold the physical comics, you can get digital copies, and they're each sort of like coded so that it's like a unique copy, and then they stop selling the digital copies at a certain point. So technically they're limited. It's not quite NFTs, but it's a little close. Anyway, but they still fortunately produce the physical comics. And, they've got guys like Scott Snyder and Francesco Francavilla and Jock and all sorts of big names. So Distillery is a big deal. Distillery is a big deal. And it is interesting. Is it 8.5? It's not 8.5 by 11, actually. It's a little wider than that. It's a little wider. Here. I draw. I've got a ruler. Let's see. It is, hold on, wait, maybe Andy's right. Oh, geez. Andy, you knew what you were talking about. It is 8.5 wide, but it isn't quite 11 high like normal like printer paper. It's about a quarter inch shy of 11 inches. Huh. But maybe that's just like due to trim. Wow, I look at that and it looks so square to me, but it is actually almost regular US typing paper size. Yeah, I'm a guy that like when I get stuff like this, I get like, omnibuses too and stuff. So I put this like more on a bookshelf, and I get comics of all sorts of different sizes. Like I'll get, my favorite thing is Monsters. That's also an atypical size. I get plenty of manga that is not regular comic size. Just dropping stuff off the windowsill. That's fine. Whatever. Sorry, Swamp Thing. What else is like sort of an odd size? If I pull these over, are they all going to come down or not? Distilleries, different size. This one by Dark Horse was awesome. Kali, that came out last year. This is a fantastic action story. This one isn't really regular comic size. Fantastic Four Full Circle by Abrams Comics. And I absolutely adore these days. One of my favorite comics that's coming out right now, folks. I can't say enough good things about it. The Last Mermaid by Derek Kirkham. I think this book is amazing, and that's square. So yes, this stuff doesn't easily fit in a long box, but I guess I'm just sort of like, for me, ultimately, a good story trumps that, but I'm also not really a collector per se. My comics just get stacked up. So, you know, whatever. That's just me. I do understand how it could be frustrating if you're very organized with your comics. I do understand that. I am not very organized with my comics. I am a total format junkie. I love comics in different sizes and weird formats. I do too. So I love going up and down Artist Alley. And if people have, say, like sketchbooks or self-printed and stapled comics, I kind of love that stuff. I love it. I cannot wait. I think Last Mermaid is one of the best comics out there right now. Probably not. I talk to the folks at Dynamite a bit here and there about, like, you know, doing interviews with their people or like helping out a little bit. They haven't really talked to me about doing another cover, but I will put it out there. I think I could do a great job on things that I'm passionate about. Ninja Turtles and G.I. Joe both get plenty of variant covers. If either of those publishers want, I would publicize the hell out of it and do my absolute best to make a good cover. Those are two books I'd love to do a variant on. Well, it's just not the area that I'm an expert in, like, you know, the slabbing and grading and collecting. I mean, I probably know more than the average person, but it isn't the part that excites me. At the same time, I think it's a valid form of getting into comics. If that's something that brings you pleasure, I'm not going to be mad if somebody out there is collecting and preserving comics. If that's where they want to spend their money, I don't think that it's a good value. I don't find it fun. But if that's what they want to do and that preserves the comics, it doesn't hurt me. Doesn't hurt me if that's what they want to do. Anyway. Oh, good. I'm glad. Let's see. Have you gotten any images? $10 first trade comics. I'm sure I have. I'm sure I have. But anyway. All right. Let me go back to the news. I really took a tangent there. So, okay. We got here talking about Distillery. So David Steinberger, Chip Mosier, right? They did Comixology. Now they're doing Distillery. Why am I saying this? Because Chip Mosier posted a bunch of photos to social media this week of the two of them visiting Netflix. So, you know, why are they? There was no discussion of exactly why they were meeting them. There was speculation, for instance, on sites like Bleeding Cool, on Reddit, things like that, asking whether they're intending to sell Distillery to Netflix. I'll be honest, I don't think that that's likely because they're so new. I don't think Netflix would really be looking for that at this time. You never know, but I don't think so. But who knows? Bleeding Cool posted about this though, right? And something came out of that. Oh, hold on. Let's I'll follow up in the news, but that's a big super chat. Whoop. Nick swinging by to say hi and wishing everyone a happy 4th of July. Yeah, have fun. Good luck to the pets and vets. I know it's not fun for them. Asking everyone to please hit that thumbs up as it helps Chris's algorithm. It really does, which helps the channel grow. Love all of Chris's shows and want to support as much as possible. Happy 4th to all. Nick supports a lot of YouTubers that talk about comics. It's not just me, but thank you, Nick. That's really kind of you. kind of you to donate, but also kind of you to say words like that. I appreciate that. You know, you thank you. I really, really appreciate it a lot. I hope you understand that. Yeah. And I'm excited to you see what you guys are coming out with. You've always got Vampirella and Army of Darkness and Red Sonja. Red Sonja is going to be big this year when they get that movie. But they do a lot on Kickstarter these days. Dynamite does, because it helps figure out exactly how many should you print and can you like add additional rewards versus like just selling it to the store. I think that there's only just over a day left for their Darkwing Duck Kickstarter, but it's the least I can do to mention something like that after Nick gives a generous super chat like that. But if you're into Darkwing Duck, I know that they've got a campaign right now for that book. Thank you. Thank you for the kind words. I take it the fireworks is illegal where you are. So technically, yes. But here's the thing about Washington State. At least when you're close to Seattle, there is a lot of native tribal land here. A lot. More than some states is all I'm saying. I grew up in Massachusetts and there was some, but not as much as there is in Washington. And almost all of it seems to have fireworks stands year round. So while it is, yes, you can get in trouble for setting them off, fireworks are very easy to obtain, as big as you want, and they're going to be going off everywhere here. And I feel bad for, like, my cats don't mind, fortunately, but I feel bad. I know dogs never really like it. I've had, family dogs before, and they hate the sound of thunder and of fireworks, and I feel bad for them. And I've had quite a few friends that, were former service members, and loud, surprising noises like that, it's just not good. It's just not good. So I've gotten to a point where I'm kind of over fireworks. Like, I don't mind them if I'm, say, at a beach or a show or something, but they're a little, like, they don't excite me. They don't excite me too much. Anyway, sorry. Thank you, everybody, for the kind words. Let's see. Speaking of Red Sonja, has there been any updates on the ElfQuest series? I haven't heard anything about ElfQuest in quite a while. But you know what? I do want to do an episode about Wendy Pini, Richard, and what they've done with ElfQuest. That's a really long-running indie series that's got a lot of interesting stuff. All right, let me restart again on the news. I don't know how I'm going to do this with chapters because this is long, but okay. All right, so I was saying that Bleeding Cool reported on Steinberger and Mosier going to Netflix, asking why. And they noted as part of that article how Netflix almost bought Valiant back in 2018. There were rumblings that Netflix was going to step up and buy Valiant. That didn't happen. And consequently, a Chinese investment group bought Valiant, and they haven't been doing great financially since then. What is it, DMG or something? I forget. But that, in turn, prompted Dinesh Shamdasani, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, Dinesh, but he was the former Valiant publisher, and he's currently the Bad Idea publisher. He posted this tweet. He said about this news article, he said, "That's true. Netflix almost saved Valiant from falling into the hands of the Chinese. As we were getting serious about making a deal, though, Mark Miller got in Ted Sarandos' ear about Valiant being unnecessary post-Miller World acquisition." Ted Sarandos is the president or CEO, whichever, of Netflix, if you don't know. So, as just part of that, like, to explain this, Mark Miller had sold his creator-owned stuff in Miller World to Netflix back in 2016. No formal numbers have been shared, but it's estimated to have been a deal around $31 million. And I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not. That's just what Dinesh alleges. Has Netflix done a whole lot, though, with the Miller World stuff? Because they did Jupiter's Legacy for a season. But aside from that, like, I think that Kick-Ass and Kingsman are both still with whichever studio developed those. I don't think that was included in the Miller World deal. I think the Miller World deal is over now. I don't know. I don't know. It probably would have had an end time. I don't know. Huh. I didn't even think to look that up. I think Fox, which would now sort of be Disney, made the Kingsman and Kick-Ass stuff. I think so. Aside from Jupiter's Legacy, we got the Super Crooks anime and the first season of Chosen One. I didn't realize that. Wow, I totally missed that. Maybe I did. I think that a bunch of Mark Miller stuff has been adapted pretty successfully. I didn't love the second Kick-Ass, but I think the first Kick-Ass is pretty darn good. I think the first Kingsman is really good. Wanted is pretty good. But I didn't realize that they'd done more than Jupiter's Legacy. The other stuff, that is, though, not really Mark Miller's fault. I'm going to say that's something about Netflix, which makes me wonder if I even want to keep my subscription, is they put out so much stuff that I never have pushed to me in an algorithm or any marketing or anything like that. And you'd think any comic book series, they'd want to let somebody like me know, but I sincerely didn't even know about that. And I feel bad. I feel like I should be plugged into comic book stuff, whether I like it or not. I should be aware of it. I do a show about comics. I didn't know that. That totally eluded me. Wow. Super Crooks is technically in the Jupiter's Legacy universe. I mean, in the comics, all of his stuff is connected. So, yeah. But how come they haven't made, like, why didn't Netflix do something bigger, like, say, Nemesis, you know? I don't know. Let's move on to more news. This cracked me up. Let me know, guys. I'm going to play a clip in a minute, but I'll need you to respond whether you hear the sound. I'm going to put in my headphones to see if I hear sound. But first, I'm going to relay to you this story. This is about two comic creators using a third to sort of mess with a fourth, okay? So this week, Chip Zdarsky posted this hilarious story to his Substack, and I wanted to plug that because he's got a great newsletter. Surprise, surprise, a really good comic book writer has a really good newsletter. So many comic book writers have good newsletters on stuff like Substack. So it discusses how, when he and Gerry Duggan learned that Jonathan Hickman was going to be stepping away from the X-Men books after he had, launched the Krakoa era, they wanted to do something special for him. So Duggan and Zdarsky teamed up to hire Rob Liefeld through Cameo, anonymously, it should be noted, and with the goal of giving Jonathan advice on how to write comics. Because if you remember, this is a deep pull, but back in 2019, Liefeld, he did not like Jonathan Hickman's writing. He did not like the Krakoa era, and he talked about it in a lot of videos. There's a lot of videos of them where he's just not a fan, which is fine, but he wasn't a fan. So they decided to hire him anonymously to give Jonathan Hickman advice on how to write, which I think is funny because I do think Jonathan Hickman is a very good writer. This is what their note to Rob said. I'm sorry, I'm really cracking up thinking about how they did this. If you don't know, Cameo is something where people can just sort of reach out, they tell you a little something, and the celebrity will record a video for somebody's birthday or wedding or whatever. I'll give you some that my friends gave to me in a minute. I've got but that's tangential. So here's what they said. Our top salesperson is leaving his job to pursue his dream of writing and drawing his own comics. We know he loves you, the X-Men, Deadpool, and graphic design. He won't show us his comic, but we know he writes dense, complex stories. Any tips? And so here's what Rob gave them as advice. Tell me if you actually hear it, though. I don't know if it's... Oh, okay. No, okay. Hold on, hold on. Then I'm pausing it. All right. I didn't know for sure if this was connected to the audio or not. Sorry, everyone. Not that important. It just Rob is a very animated individual. I thought it would be a little funnier if you could hear him as well, but he's saying like he starts off just going like, "This is Rob Liefeld, the creator of Deadpool and all the things that you love, blah blah blah." He goes, "So I hear that you want to like know how to write comics. Well, I'll give you the advice that I got from Jim Shooter, a great editor, and this is honestly good advice." He goes, 878. What you need to do is like the first 8 pages of a comic, show your characters using their power and doing something exciting. The next 7, do like the family drama, get into like the characters' personal lives, explain who they are, and then close with an 8-page action sequence. That's how you that's how you hook them for the next time and use powers in interesting ways and stuff. It's not that bad advice, to be honest. It really, if you don't have a good structure in mind for a 22-page story, that's great. Wait, was it 878 or would it be 787 actually? Yes. 14. Sorry, it would have been 787. Flip what I was saying. I just think it's funny that they did this anonymously and called like Jonathan Hickman their top salesperson and stuff like that. So anyway, it was funny. Oh, that's not nice. That's pretty good advice. Are you listening? Trust me. I think that yeah, Jonathan is doing pretty good, but for somebody who legitimately would be starting out, it's good advice. The idea of like Liefeld like supposedly teaching Jonathan Hickman how to write is funny to me. 787, baby. It's good advice. It is good advice. And Jim Shooter was a clever guy in a lot of ways. Not everybody loved working for him, but under his leadership, Marvel did put out some great comics. They put them out on time, and he had some. I can't agree with everything he did. I think that there were some misses in there. Like the New Universe didn't launch great, in my opinion. There were some other things, but overall, he had some good ideas. He really did. He's smart. Anyway, I think that this Hickman guy might be doing all right too. He might be doing them. Oh, right. I was going to tell you about the cameos that my pal sent me. So this is going back several years, but I got COVID. You guys may remember, like towards the beginning. Well, before you could get a vaccine. Anyway, I was being super careful, but I must have gotten it at work, and it was really bad. Like I was in the hospital for a week. Getting oxygen. It was not fun. It was very scary. It's very scary. And a couple of my friends teamed up to get me a couple cameos when I got out of the hospital to help make me feel better. Because I recovered. It was a long recovery period too. Once I even got out, I was a long recovery period. Who did they get? They got they got who does the voice for Dr. Venture? An actor that I do like. His name isn't coming to me, but the guy that does the voice for Dr. Venture, he did like a cameo. They hired him to just like, say feel better and this and that. And then they also hired, James Urbaniak. Thank you. I did do an intro, and I'll be honest, when I did that intro in the hospital, I was terrified that I was not leaving. But I had an idea, and I recorded it going like, when I get out, this could be funny, like recording from the hospital. Anyway, so they got me James Urbaniak, fun. And then they got Chris Hansen, who used to host this part of Dateline where they would like catch a predator. and he goes like, "Oh, your friends tell me, Chris, why don't you have a seat over there? Your friends tell me you've done some suspicious stuff lately. For instance, you do YouTube. Why would you be doing that? You know, he does that, and I'm like, oh my God, that cracked me up. That cracked me up. It was so ridiculous. He was like accusatory towards me. So they were sort of teasing me. But anyway, yeah, those are funny. Those are the only two cameos I've got. Have any of you ever bought for a friend or family member a cameo or received a good cameo? Oh, dude, everybody does Cameo. Like when you start like going into that, you will find so many people that you never would have thought of are doing that stuff. To catch a YouTuber. Yep. Why don't you tell me what you're doing here tonight? Anyway, I'm not seeing any feedback on people with cameos. I know there's a delay, but I was just seeing if there was anything else. Let's see. Danhausen makes good cameos. Okay, wrestler, right? Yeah, wrestler. My best friend was on a TV show and does them. My friends got me a Kevin Conroy cameo. That's nice that you have something like that to hold on to. Wait. You deserve a Kermit the Frog cameo. Was that a perfect impression? Did I nail it? Anyway. All right, we'll move on. There's lots to talk about tonight. So the next writer of Amazing Spider-Man has been revealed. Twitter user Z was the first person I saw to do this, so I would call that a scoop. They showed a polybagged Moon Knight #0 that was sent to retailers to let them see, you know, what's coming up in Moon Knight. But it also had this little stamp on it that says, that teases what's coming up for Amazing Spider-Man. It says from Joe Kelly. A new era of Amazing Spider-Man from Joe Kelly begins here. Oh. It says that, yeah, the next one to take over from Zeb Wells is Joe Kelly. Probably a lot of you know, but Joe Kelly was who I would argue really made Deadpool explode in popularity. Deadpool was well known, don't get me wrong, but he was the first one to like write an ongoing Deadpool title, and pretty sure the first one to really make him break the fourth wall. Joe Kelly's also co-created Big Hero 6 with Baymax. That was made into a movie. He co-created Ben 10. That was a popular cartoon. I didn't see it, but I know it was popular. He was one of the Uncanny X-Men writers of the 90s. Anyway, yeah, so pretty big name. We'll see what happens. I don't know what to expect from him, but hopefully some good humor. We'll see. Wildcats 3.0. Okay. Marvel's teaming up with Dark Horse officially. So this week, the two publishers announced a new multi-year licensing agreement for Dark Horse to publish a range of art books. It's going to be called Bullpen Books. But it is, it's got Dark Horse down here. They're the ones publishing it. They're just publishing stuff that Marvel has available in their archives. Thank you. I was wondering about that when I highlighted that. Thank you. So, good person to oversee it, John Lind. John Lind has been Eisner nominated for his book design work with Dark Horse. In 2019, he did Dark Horse's art books that came from Kitchen Sink Press. So he's got experience with that, and he's been acknowledged by the industry as doing a good job putting together these books. The first book that they're going to print under Bullpen Books is this one, The Art of the Amazing Spider-Man. And it's interesting that they called it that and just have John Romita down here, because I would have more referred to it as like, The Art of John Romita, but it is specifically John Romita Sr., 7 issues that he did of Amazing Spider-Man, between 39 and 122, but it's taken from the original pages, and there'll be covers and essays as well. So I think that an art book of John Romita's like original art pages sounds really interesting. I would love to see that. It's going to be 200 pages. It's 10 by 14. Speaking of unique dimensions, hardcover, $60. October 16th is when that comes out. Could be good. Yeah, a lot of people saying nice things about John Romita, no question. Definitely one of the best. Such a different artist for Spider-Man than Steve Ditko in so many ways. Ditko's Spider-Man was weird, and thank God he was the guy that made Spider-Man, because that's always been like a part of what makes Spider-Man a little unique, is that he's more, spindly than the average superhero. These like, creepy crawly and stuff like that, has like, a very unique, iconic mask. But there's no question that under John Romita, the character grew in popularity, and Spider-Man became a little more buff. Peter Parker became a little more handsome. The women he drew were very attractive. But John Romita's art, very pleasing to the eye. Good storytelling, good action. I don't think that under the era, like if you shift from Ditko to Romita, not as many iconic villains created for Spider-Man after Ditko left. I think that you look back and you're like, no, Ditko himself definitely invented like the lion's share of Spider-Man's rogues, even to this day, as like new ones like, Venom or Carnage come out. Null. Or anything else attached to symbiotes. But, after Ditko, it's like, okay, Romita did Kingpin. Kingpin's fantastic. Maybe it was Rhino, and that's about it, in my opinion. Anyway. Yeah, more traditionally heroic. Totally agree. Good artwork, but I'm glad that Ditko was the guy that sort of created and did so many years of Spider-Man originally, because I think it really gave Spider-Man a different vibe forever. Yeah. Sin Eater. I mean, Sin Eater's okay. Not huge. Hobgoblin was John Romita Jr. many, many years later. Shocker. Oh, I see. You're just listing other iconic enemies that have come after Ditko. Excuse me. Got it. That's fair. That's fair. I think that Romita probably was Kangaroo. Yeah, I think so. Anyway, I'll keep moving on. But it is interesting to see these two publishers work together on art books. Look, you guys know I'm a big Godzilla fan. I was just amused. Marvel's doing a ton of variant covers with Godzilla. All of these are variant covers by coming from Marvel, which is just interesting because, of course, IDW has the Godzilla license. But why is this happening? Well, Marvel came to a new deal with Toho, and that let them recently print a facsimile of their 1970s Godzilla issue 1, also an omnibus that collects the entire 24-issue run by Doug Mensch and Herb Trimpe. Oh, I somehow missed the E there, but yeah, Herb Trimpe. And to help celebrate, they're also releasing 21 variant covers in September. I thought one thing that was a little interesting is I couldn't include them all really, but they include all sorts of different versions of Godzilla. They're not in the story. This is just for cover fun. But, here we've got sort of classic Showa era Godzilla. There are some that are closer to like, the Millennium versions. This is one on Avengers is very specifically Shin Godzilla. Not too old there. Don't think I saw one that really looked like the version from -0 or anything. Or the American Godzilla. There's a lot that are sort of riffs on Showa era, but that is the longest era. So anyway, going into a bit of Godzilla trivia there. But each of them looked pretty good. I think that there's something about Godzilla that excites a lot of different artists. There's the scale, the danger, and the texture. Those are exciting elements. And the destruction that you can do with Godzilla. You can like really just like crumble big buildings or, just have them stomp on stuff. Venom Godzilla is a pretty fun idea. That's a pretty fun idea. But yeah, it just something fun. The Daredevil one here is by Nick Bradshaw. What this one is Miles Morales. Who is that? I can't read my own thing here. Let's see. Can I make that a little bigger? Make it a little bigger. Okay. Ronnie Jones? Is that what I'm reading? I don't know who that is. Let's see. Who did this is probably in Hyukali. Let me double check. Avengers. Just trying to see which ones I grabbed. Oh no, wait, that isn't that is I just can't read it. Darn it. I shouldn't have put it in so small. I'm sorry. I can't read it. I'll stop. Trying to figure out the best dimensions for this. That works. Right? Yeah. Yeah, Chris Somney, I saw that one. It looked really, really cool. But there is a good Hulk one where Hulk is literally just using his strength to hold up Godzilla's foot from squashing him. That was pretty cool. The Marvel run is really fun, by the way. If you've never read Marvel's Godzilla, it's a very different, sort of weird Godzilla, but it's good. It's really fun. It's fun to see him smash around the Marvel universe, going up against S.H.I.E.L.D. and eventually the Avengers and Fantastic Four. Oh, and what was it called? The Champions. We don't get to see Hulk fight Godzilla in the Godzilla run, but you get Hercules, which is decent. And Hercules is able to like tip over Godzilla, but that's about all he can do. Greg Land's, well, it just looked very referenced. I'll just leave it at that and move on. Let's see what else we've got for news. Marvel's returning to Hall H, folks. That's the biggest, what do you call it? The biggest stage at San Diego Comic-Con, Hall H. And that's a big deal because they hadn't been there in a minute. I'm trying to make this a little bigger for me to read. I shrunk it too much. Hold on. Yeah. Okay. Now I can read it better. Thanks. Okay. So Marvel Studios had skipped Hall H at San Diego Comic-Con last year, which makes sense. You know, they were stepping back. They're only releasing, their one movie this year, Deadpool and Wolverine. So they just didn't have a lot to talk about, really. But they're coming back this July. The Deadpool Wolverine movie literally comes out the weekend of San Diego Comic-Con, apparently. And Marvel's going to talk about their upcoming things. Captain America, Brave New World, Thunderbolts, Asterisk, and Fantastic Four. So they've got a bunch to talk about. Probably some new announcements, too. Who knows? I try to be hopeful for that stuff. Sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's average. Sometimes it's a little below average. I don't know. But the thing I'm curious about is whether they'll be brave enough to give us updates on things like Blade or Avengers 5 and 6, because clearly both of those have had weird setbacks. Yeah, I can't avoid the current TV spot that shows Tyler Mane as Sabretooth. It's everywhere. I mean, speaking of old Fox characters, we'd seen him before. I think that this actually might be Sabretooth. If the Total Film put out an issue this past week that has high res images. This is clearly Toad, Ray Park. And then people are wildly speculating that everybody in the background is a character from the multiverse. I saw some people saying that this is supposed to be the Sticky Fingers version of Blade. And that seems like a crazy stretch to me. That would be hilarious, but I just don't think that they would do that. If you look at this, look right behind Wolverine, and you can totally make out which character is positioned directly behind him. If you remember the characters outfit. I won't say it. Please don't say it in the chat. But yeah, there's no question there is a character here from the movies. All right. Yeah, they're gonna spend the entire con plugging Madam Web 2 and the crisp, refreshing taste of Pepsi. But the Pepsi fireworks factory did explode, so I don't know. I know, I did exactly that. I would love it if it was the Sticky Fingers version of Blade and had like Deadpool saying like it's too hard to make a good Blade movie, but they're not gonna do that, I don't think. That's a good question. Why the asterisk after Thunderbolts? Here's my personal thought on that is that it implies that there will be something more to it than that. In other words, some sort of a twist. Thunderbolts, like, we can't really put the genie back in the bottle and get the original twist, which was that the Thunderbolts were actually villains pretending to be heroes. So we're starting with Thunderbolts working more as like, a government sort of agency. But here's my, and this is based on nothing, folks, except that like an asterisk implies that there's something more to it and Thunderbolts should have a twist. I think that there will be a late movie, maybe even post-credits type thing that sets up that whoever is left in the Thunderbolts could form the Dark Avengers, because in the comics, of course, Norman Osborn as Iron Patriot took over S.H.I.E.L.D. and hired supervillains to play superheroes. He had Duggan as Wolverine. He had Bullseye as Hawkeye. He had Moonstone as somebody. I forget who right now. But I think that that's what could happen, is that Thunderbolts could end sort of inverting the twist. And again, I'm just speculating. This isn't based on something, so it really isn't a spoiler. It's just like that's something they could do. That's something they could do. No matter what, I think that the asterisk implies a twist. Fingers crossed that one of those background characters is NFL Super Pro. If there was anyone out there that could afford to sort of license that idea from the NFL, it would probably be Marvel Studios. We'll see. Bring in US1. Yeah, there's a lot of weird characters we could. I mean, at this point, yeah, let's bring in Sleepwalker and make him an important part of the movie. Combo Man, right? All sorts of fun things you could do. But I think we have to also keep the focus very squarely on the heroes. It's already a two-hander, so that means you got to be kind of efficient with your time. But I am looking forward to the movie. I hope it's funny, and I hope it's action-packed, and I hope that there's some good character drama. We'll see. Speaking of more X-Men stuff, Marvel revealed some more X-Men books. I'll be honest. It seems beyond overkill how many X-Men titles are launching. They're getting some great talent. It's just so much. It scares me away from some of them. But I will admit to being pretty interested in this one because of the talent. So it's like I think that there's too much, and then I'm like, "Boo, that one I like." Well, so for Mystique, Marvel confirmed that Declan Shalvey will write and draw a 5-issue Mystique series starting October 16th. Yeah, that's a great guy. Like, I really liked Declan's writing in the last several years. Old Dog and Thundercats. I think he's doing a good job. We'll see. Here's what Marvel had, at least as part of its sort of, it's not solicitation, it's just their sort of press copy. How do you track a subject with a history that contradicts itself? How do you stop a force whose motives change like Quicksilver? Not capitalized Quicksilver. How do you stop a target that can be anyone? That's the question that confronts Nick Fury as he stumbles upon a web of lies and espionage leading back to Mystique. From the ashes of Krakoa, the shape-shifting mutant terrorist returns to remind the world exactly why it hates and fears her. Seems like they're definitely pivoting her to, be more of a villain then she's been recently she's been more of like an anti-villain, which is kind of like an anti-hero, but it's an anti-villain. We'll see. I think him on a miniseries makes sense. Him on a miniseries makes sense. And speaking of X-Men minis, this isn't the only one they announced this week. So Marvel also revealed that there will be a Sentinels miniseries. Here's the premise. A squad of soldiers, each one scarred from earth-shattering superhero conflicts and upgraded with nanotechnology. That stuff was new back in the 90s. They're tasked with apprehending dangerous mutants that threaten coexistence. Written by Alex Packnadel. He did Red Carnage, I know. Justin Mason on art. I'm trying to remember. Justin Mason did Spider-Punk. It involves the government starting up the Sentinel program under mutant Lawrence Trask. Lawrence Trask has the ability to see into the future, essentially. He's clairvoyant. And so it's upgrading some mutants with Sentinel technology to protect the world against evil mutants. That's also 5 issues, and that one starts October 9th. I kind of like the premise, but I'm not as excited about this one in general. I'm just like, maybe, I don't know. Maybe if like one of these 4 characters was like a really important existing character, but they're all new characters. So I don't know. How many people out there are like, oh, Lawrence Trask, wow, the son of Bolivar Trask? I love stories with that character. Nobody's that excited about Lawrence Trask, so we'll see. Yes, this one is sponsored by Northrop Grumman. And if you ever want to see more about that, I did do an episode on Comic Tropes about Marvel's worst promotional comics, and that does include one by military weapons manufacturer Northrop Grumman working with the Avengers. We're all Trask heads here, yes. So we'll see. I say that too much. We'll see. Jesus. I learned stuff about myself making this show. Okay, this news is very time sensitive. Wait, what do you mean I drew that book? Sean, lovely to see you. What do you mean you drew that book? Which one? What did I just mention? Not this one. This one said that it was drawn by Justin Mason. Did you draw a related book? I'm testing my own memory. Because I respect... Oh, and by the way, Sean, I know you were just at like a Comic-Con like within the last month in New York, and my friends from Brooklyn went and went to your table, and they said that you were super, super nice. Oh, you drew the Northrop Grumman book. Oh my God, I had totally forgotten that was you. What? Right. Engine. That was their group, Engine. Oh my God, what was that project like? Because I remember it was New York Comic-Con, and Marvel was going to give away all of these Northrop Grumman books. I know you probably worked so hard on it, but then they pulled the books. It's a very hard book to find. Oh my God. Like it got such backlash, the idea of it. It just did. And so that's actually a kind of rare comic to come across. I totally forgot that you drew that, Sean. I wonder what that was like going through that. Like, you're doing a huge project that I hope paid well when it's a promotional comic, but then like Marvel just sort of backed off. I felt like I was being canceled for taking that job. I'm sorry that's not fair. That's not fair. I mean, because you don't know how something's going to be received. Nobody sets out, in my opinion, to create a bad story. I'm sure nobody did. But you can't. You have no objectivity of how something will be received until it's out there. I've had things like that on like the shows that I make. Like people just did not go. Oh man, I'm sorry that I had no idea that you dealt with backlash like that. I had no idea. Wow. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Sean. I feel like you've always proven yourself to be a good guy, and I'm really sorry to hear that you dealt with that. Let's see. It was a story about cybersecurity. I know that. I know that. Yeah, if you read the story, yes. But I think that there's a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths that like Marvel was partnering with that company. But that's the bad press that Northrop Grumman had. And it's too bad that that rubbed off not just on Marvel, but on actual people involved there. I know that you guys weren't trying to do anything mean-spirited with that. Jeez. Huh. I wouldn't have thought that that would roll down to you, but that's why I ask. Like, this is a unique opportunity. Thank you very much for sharing with us, Sean. That's interesting. I hope you're doing great now. Like I said, you were at this New York Comic Con, and my friends that went, they just said that you were like super nice, that like you were their favorite part of this convention. So I just wanted to throw that out to you. So thanks for being nice to my friends. I'll go back to some news. Sean's drawn lots. Sean's definitely done a... Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for that. This one's time sensitive, folks. Let me bust this out. So Image has sort of a newer thing where you can nominate your local comic shop for their retailer award. It's kind of nice, but it's time sensitive. So they have open nominations for the second Retailer of the Year award. You can go to this Google form if you wanted to nominate your store. That's the address that you can use. Nominations close tomorrow, July 2nd. So they only announced it this week. They've got a very short window. They had a short window when they first announced it too. They probably only have so much manpower to go over this. So they've got a very short nomination period, okay? Just wanted to put that out there. Here's what the winner will get. The winner, first of all, will get announced July 25th at the San Diego Comic-Con Lunar Distribution event. So we'll all know later. And this is what the winning store would get. Potentially your local comic shop. A commemorative, I cannot speak tonight, a commemorative medallion to display with pride. This is Image's words. An Image Select Retailer Award window cling for their store's window. Nice. A spotlight Q&A to be featured on Image Comics' social media platforms and website. And the store's choice of a gold foil exclusive variant branded as an Image Select Retailer Award winner with store logo. Limited to 250 copies. So it's kind of a nice little thing to be able to give to your store if you think that they do an exceptional job. If you go here, it basically has you write a little bit about what makes them great in terms of service and, anything beyond that you can do. I can put the link in chat, I think. Hold on. Let me go back here. I have to actually manually type it, apparently. But I'm almost done. I think. There. Oh, is it only for U.S. retailers? I did not think to check, which now that you say that, makes me feel a little ignorant. If you click on it, I'm sure it tells you what the rules and regulations are. That is an excellent question, Daniel. I don't know. I would assume anybody can. I would assume that they wouldn't have a reason to exclude a retailer in another country. Anyway, if you really like your store, you'd want to nominate them tonight. Moving on. Almost done with the news. Fox is adapting this Riley Rossmo comic called Proof to film. And yeah, wow, Riley Rossmo is having a great sort of month. First, it gets announced that he's drawing the new Daniel Warren Johnson comic, The Moon is Following Us. And now one of the older comics he's drawn is getting adapted into TV. So specifically, Fox is developing Proof into a supernatural procedural series. It's kind of like they said, X-Files meets Men in Black. And that's a pretty good way of positioning it and of taking the premise and turning it into an ongoing show format. It's actually a pretty good idea for a show. A slightly funnier version of X-Files, that's a great idea. And I could see how this could work that way. If you haven't read it, the comic is by writer Alex Grecian and artist Riley Rossmo, and it pairs two very unlikely heroes. We've got disgruntled FBI agent in training Ginger Rodriguez and John Proof Frock, a jazz-loving Bigfoot. And the comic ran for 33 issues between 2007 and 2010. So, yeah. I loved Proof. Nice. Let's see. High five to Riley and Alex. That sounds neat. Yeah, so I think it's a good idea, actually, for a TV show. The Bigfoot, like, you could definitely still sort of, like, do this with basically probably less makeup than, say, Worf from Star Trek. And just have, like, a really big, tall guy. I mean, he wears a suit and stuff. But, you know, he's technically a Bigfoot. But the two of them investigate supernatural stuff. And it's kind of cool. And the last piece of news I have, boom, talking about WEBTOON. It's just sort of business news. And I'm not going to go into all the technical details because that kind of bores me. But it is a big deal. WEBTOON launched on the NASDAQ this week, one of the stock exchanges, with an introductory public offering using the ticker symbol WBTN if you want to like check on anything like that. Now, their parent company, Naver, in South Korea, is actually a separate entity, just to be clear. This is for WEBTOON Entertainment, sort of a branch of it here in the US. Anyway, Naver is separate. Its stock is sort of struggling. It's not that bad, but it's not going as well. WEBTOON launched really strong. Now, this is WEBTOON's new thing, but keep in mind, it's a matter of like less than a week. So it looks like it drops off, but also we're talking about a difference between 21.5 a share and 23. Very tiny margin overall. So it of course, it launches strongest on day one, just to be clear. I just want to put that in context. This is not a stock plummeting because you need to look at, like, I set it out to a month, but this is only a couple days. This is only like 3 days. Just to, wait, yeah, 1, 2, 3 days. That's like 3 data points. So they bragged about a bunch of stuff launching this. They earned a valuation of $2.7 billion. Actually, now that I think of it, I looked today, that valuation went up to $2.9 billion. Again, that's not a real number per se. That's like when an expert says what they think the company should be worth, but it's not like that means that's what it would sell for if you sold it right now. Valuations are weird. But it did earn already over $300 million in less than 5 days. If you guys don't know too much about stocks, that's fine. But an IPO is when they first offer it to the public to be able to buy shares of the company. The idea is to raise capital so that that business can use that money to invest in itself and grow. And in turn, they're saying you own X many shares of our business and you get dividends and things like that as the company does better. And if it continues to increase in value and do well as a business, you could eventually sell your shares and make a profit. Of course, you can also lose money. Let's be clear. I am definitely not recommending that you guys get into the stock market or this stock market specifically. The stock market it's almost a scam, but you know, you can make it work for you. Like, I do have some money in some mutual funds, but the stock market there's a lot of working parts to it and a lot of things that can make stocks go up and down, and you could lose a lot of money. So if you're thinking of getting into it, don't just do it yourself. Sincerely, talk to a financial advisor. They'll take like a portion of you have to pay them. But if that's what you want to get into for investing, I really think you should talk to an expert. Okay. I just want to say that because I am not a financial expert and I am not recommending anything. I am just talking about it in the context of news. The company bragged about having 170 million active users. Very impressive. And this was interesting. I'd love to see a source for this, but they said that they pay their talent an average of $48,000 a year, with the top 100 creators earning over $1 million a year. Okay, to solve this equation, what I would need to know is how many people are you saying are talent, so that I can figure out, like, what with that average, and knowing that at least 100 creators are earning over a million, that could be skewing this number way up for an average versus like meaning, okay, sure, 100 people are making 1 million a year, but 30,000 people are making $200 a year. You know what I'm saying? This number sounds impressive at first is what I'm saying, but when you're missing part of the equation, you have no idea if it means that almost all the people are making 48,000 a year. Like, what's the median on this? Give me the median. And if the median is like 23,000 a year or something, I'm going to go, oh, well, that means that, like, the top creators definitely do well, but like most people don't. That's all I'm saying. I would love to know. Yeah, exactly. I'd want to know what the median is. How far off is the median from the average, so that I can like get at least a sense of this. But of course, they're not going to share that because they're trying to raise money. They're giving you these things, but I'm trying to make you guys skeptical. When you see big numbers like this, that might well be impressive, but you have to be skeptical enough to go, but maybe it isn't. Maybe there's something that's missing from what they're telling me. That's all I'm saying. The company said half of the film and TV productions being made in South Korea right now are based off of their comics. That one I do believe. It just sort of passes my sniff test. I don't know that to be true, but I will say I definitely hear about a lot of South Korean movies and TV, and then I find out they are, in fact, based on a webtoon. I do believe that. I don't have a reason to doubt it. And in North America, some of the recent titles that have attracted Hollywood attention, and that's part of like why Webtoon entertainment exists here, is to take those properties and turn them into movies and TV shows here in English. Two of them are Death of a Pop Star, which has Diablo Cody involved as the writer. She's done a bunch of movies that have done well. And Freaking Romance, and that's one that Skybound is working on an adaptation of. So anyway, we'll see. Me and Elon Musk have an average of $50 billion in wealth. Wow. Jojo, you must be doing so well. I am so happy to hear that. All right. I don't have anything else to add to this, but what this likely means, if I just boil it down to like, how does this impact you and I? It means that there will probably be some American movies and TV shows based on webtoons. That is probably the end result of this, just to be clear. I definitely also see, like, look, with these numbers, I think that the webtoon and digital comics market is growing, and I think it is likely to keep growing. I don't think it is a flash in the pan thing. I think that this is definitely a legit reading method that a lot of people are interested in. as far as exactly how to properly monetize it and pay talent, I think that those are some serious questions that are going to evolve. Hopefully, people are not getting scammed too bad. Although, if we look at the history of comics, obviously we see that companies can do very well, and sometimes the individuals, even when they do well, aren't doing as well as maybe they should. And I'm not trying to be negative. I love comics. It's just, boy, I just wish some of the talent involved had better contracts in retrospect. That's all. So, lot of comics that came out this week. Lot of comics. Let me see. I don't know. I'll just show you real quick which ones I have read. And if one of them sounds like you especially want to hear my take on it, go ahead and list it in the chat, and maybe I could prioritize that, because I'm probably not going to cover all of these. But the latest issue of Void Rivals, the penultimate issue of No One, latest issue of Feral, issue number 2 of Blood Squad 7. No matter what, I will talk about this one. Grommets, issue 2 was hilarious. Animal Pound. Got plenty that I could say about that. Bloodhunt number 4 actually takes some good twists and turns. Has been my favorite issue of the series. Final issue of Blue Book by James Tynion and Michael A. Von Oming. Final issue of Superior Spider-Man Volume 2. Latest issue of Spectacular Spider-Man. Ultimate Black Panther issue 5. And Redcoat issue 3. Okay, let's see what people say. Bloodhunt issue 4 was great. That's what I agree. Feral? Okay, you know what? My sister's vote carries a lot of weight, so just so you know. Animal Pound, Blue Book, Animal Pound, Animal Pound. I'm not familiar with No One. Blue Book, Blue Book. I did not read Rook Exodus, the No One podcast. It's still going, but yes, it is great. All right, tell you what, this gives me an idea of where to start, okay? Looks like Blue Book and Feral definitely will get talked about, so that's fair. I'm going to just pull those out. I'll probably talk about a ton of these, just to be clear. I was just looking for a starting point with so many. Oh, also, I have not had any free time. I'm sincerely working so hard on comic tropes and my day job and my mental health. I need to get a new USB cord to get my second camera to work so that I can show you guys high res close-ups of this. So all I can really do is hold this beside my head like a 2007 webcam guy. But let me talk quickly about Blue Book issue 5, Blue Book 1947 to be precise. This is a subtitle. Yeah, I'll talk about Animal Pound, Jeannie. I've got some stuff to say on that one that'll probably not make everybody happy. I liked it, but not everybody will. First of all, let me find a good example of something that Michael A. Von Oming is doing well with the storytelling in this. Here's a good example. Do you see this page here? He's telling a lot of this story without actual borders. And I love it when artists can play with the format, but it still can read clearly. And it does read clearly to me. It still follows the Z pattern. It still follows what you would expect. And I like it. This comic, Blue Book, is about just telling the history of people that reported UFO sightings, the police, the government officials, and the people that reported it, and what actually happened. This is all documented stuff, not really saying aliens are real. It's saying what the people said they saw and how authorities responded. And this specifically gets to a point where America really our military, introduced a couple programs to figure out, are aliens or flying saucers real? First, there was not even a year-long program called Project Sign to look into it. And then there was Project Grudge. Now, Project Grudge had like the goal to sort of Project Sign, first of all, was to look into this phenomena and determine, is there extraterrestrial stuff, or is this like, keep in mind this is the Cold War, right after World War II. This is like 1950. I'm starting with here. Could this be Russians with like experimental aircraft, or China or something like that? We don't know. Want to double check. Is there anything like these? This is just human based but advanced technology, or are people just sort of like misinterpreting stuff? Are they crazy? Are they attention seekers? Okay, good questions. Project Sign looked into that for about a year, and then Project Grudge started with the goal of literally just debunking this stuff, making sure that people didn't panic that there were potential aliens out there. But Project Grudge sort of like realized we're self-defeating, and it only lasted a little over a year. Project Grudge was like, just by virtue of the government funding this program to tell you that aliens aren't real, maybe that gives the wrong interpretation, right? So then began Project Blue Book, headed up by a military captain who hired people that were neither too skeptical or too much of a believer. He wanted to just look into this. And for almost 20 years, the U.S. Air Force headed up Project Blue Book, looking into potential alien visitations, flying saucers, UFOs. This was a real project that we here in America spent a lot of money on for a long time, trying to determine this. And eventually, it also sort of like, we weren't finding anything, and funding slowly got cut off because it was like, well, we're not proving that aliens exist. We definitely haven't seen any evidence of like a foreign power infiltrating or attacking us. So just a very fascinating history. This one is, it's all built up. It's called Blue Book, and it's all built up to actually, this issue fully tells you the history of Project Blue Book. Very interesting bit of history that we actually investigated this stuff so seriously for so long. And as I read this and realized, like, this is the stuff that the people that made, say, X-Files in the 90s would have grown up hearing about. Because it did finally end in like 1969, I want to say. But it's really interesting. This is like real life. And because it's covering like 20 years, it's got a lot of different people. But Avon Oeming draws a lot of, he's got like a stylization, right? He's got a stylization, but the characters look different from one another. They're easy to tell apart, and it's good storytelling. It really is. I admire the storytelling in this quite a bit. It made it a very quick read, despite, if you just glance at this, that's a good amount of text to have on a comic. But what it sort of ended up feeling like to me was listening to like a true crime podcast or a documentary, or just like reading a Wikipedia page that you came across that's really interesting. It's like that. It's like really interesting history, and the visuals just help guide you through it really fast. So I do recommend this. Like I say, this is the final issue. So if you haven't, you might want to get this in, say, like trade paperback form. There were two series, Blue Book and then Blue Book 1947. Just the entire history of, in the U.S., our fascination with lights in the sky and things that can't be explained. And I'm not telling you the specifics of what the stories are in this. That's the fun part. That's the fun part. Oeming is a master. Yeah, very, very cool. I want to believe. Ewan Mulder. All right, so Feral and Animal Pound were both things that people wanted to hear about. So Feral, I don't have as much to say about, other than this is a really exciting issue, okay? The premise of Feral is some house cats got locked out in the woods while there is a a pandemic going on. It's basically like a super aggressive form of rabies. So there are parallels to both, America dealing with COVID, but there's also parallels to sort of zombie plagues. In this, like, it's really dangerous. The cats have finally gotten home, but nobody's there. And each of these cats has different levels of intelligence. Like, Lord is a kitten, okay? Lord is just a kitten. And, when they can't find food, he thinks that, like, he can just eat a remote control. For instance, he's like, I'm eating food. And they're like, that's not food, Lord. He's like, we don't know. And he does some dumb things, but he's young. He opens a door when they hear barking from downstairs. And all the other cats are like, Lord, don't open that door. And he's like, no, it's okay. Like, let's see who it is. And it's like, okay, but they're animals, and sometimes kittens kind of do dumb things. So they act with, like, they're humanized and they talk with each other, but they also have, like, different levels of intelligence and literally different motivations. Because during most of this book, one of the cats has been really looking out for Lord. Let me find a good example of that without spoiling too much. Okay. Elsie is this kitty, the gray one with the blue eyes, kind of looks a little bit like a Siamese cat, but isn't quite. Elsie has been very protective of Lord. And we find out, like, some fascinating backstory in this. She feels guilty because when Lord first came into the house as a kitten, Elsie wanted to be an only child cat. And anybody that's owned pets knows that sometimes that's the way of pets. Sometimes pets get along and sometimes they don't. And Elsie basically opened the door and Lord got out, and the family went looking and did find Lord, but Lord had been in a fight with maybe like a raccoon or something. This is all in the past. And the third cat that lives in the house is telling this, like, really dark, sad story and upsetting all the other cats, because there's a couple others that they've come across in their adventure, and it really upsets Lord, like, to know that Elsie, the person that's always he remembers taking care of him, actually did something pretty mean, by, like, letting him out in the house and where he got hurt. And there's a reason why that third cat in the house that has always gotten along is sort of telling this story. But basically, yeah, like, the infection is very serious, and we learn some great background world building in such a clever way here. So the cats have gotten to the house and they basically use the remote to turn on the box with the sounds, the TV. They can't understand what's going on, but we, the audience, get to, like, overhear what the news readers are, like, saying about this plague. It's such a great use of the background and a way to sort of, like, tell tangential stories at the same time, both, like, what's happening with the cats and what's happening in the world outside that they don't know, but it's information that we, the audience, it's time for us to know exactly what this plague is, what the nature of it is, what like the extent is. And I give them kudos to waiting until issue 4 to really give us that full information. I guess there's still some stuff that we don't have as well. Let's see. What animal will the creative team of Feral give a horror comic to after this? Goldfish. I don't know. They might not do another one. They might just feel that, like, Stray Dogs and Feral, they've nailed it, and that's that. I love to watch news readers every night. Is that what I called the news? News readers? They're sort of news readers. It looks great. Trish Forstner, great artist, kind of, and I think I've said this before, reminds me of the Don Bluth era of Disney animation. That's the sort of look I get, but she's good. And it's cool because making each cat look different can be a little tricky. Yes, there can be some really out there different breeds, but she just finds a way to give them slightly different body types, like this kitty here. Let me get that a little closer. There's a kitty that's a little pudgy. She's a little pudge ball. And this is Lord, and he's a little younger. It also has been declawed. Anyway, Trish does a great job giving these characters personality and making them look different. They'll do Raccoons next. Raccoons, the comic, part 2, The Revenge. Let me talk about something more superhero-y for a minute. So I decided to try the Bloodhunt event, and I just sort of, like, every once in a while I jump into an event more just to see, like, what are Marvel and DC doing? You know, well, I don't know. Is it something I'm going to be able to follow along with? Because I don't read all the superhero stuff. Sometimes yes, and sometimes no. I kind of have liked Bloodhunt. You know, the premise is very simple. The vampires have all united. They used the Dark Force. That's an energy in Marvel comics. They've used that to black out the sun, so the vampires can just feed on people 24/7. And the Lord of the Vampires is not Dracula. Dracula does exist in the comics. It's Blade. And I was starting to go like, okay, fine, you know, okay, Blade has become the bad guy. And then they had him infect Black Panther. And then it was like issue 3, I think, they infected Miles Morales. And I was starting to go, well, wait a minute, this is a little weird that you're infecting all the black characters. Well, this one sidesteps that a little bit because they don't tell us the Miles Morales part of the story. Maybe he'll come back in issue 5. That subplot gets shifted to the side. Maybe it gets resolved in one of the tie-in comics, which is the part about events I don't love. I don't want to read any of the tie-in stuff. Okay. But in this, we learn that Black Panther is slowly getting healed by the thing that gives him his powers. The heart-shaped herb is actually slowly burning out the vampire plague in him. Okay. And what happened with Blade? Like, how did he become, like, why did he become evil? Because Blade isn't Blade. Blade isn't Blade. Blade has been possessed by the first vampire, Varney. The first sort of pure, he's like a demonic entity. And so it has not been Blade. Blade's body got possessed because, you know, he's the Daywalker and he's got unique powers. So that's where the story is going right now, is that Varney has captured or taken over the blade of body, the body of Blade. It's pretty interesting. I have said that. I've said that. Like, you know, like the art in this is stunning. And let's just also give credit, by the way, to colorist Marte Gracia, because that's a lot of dynamic color that could overwhelm, you know, like colors like this, they could easily overwhelm penciled artwork. I think if you look at a lot of early 90s, or more like mid to late 90s, I should say, mid to late 90s, digital coloring, sometimes it really overwhelms the art. And it's sort of disappointing in retrospect to see just how many effects and gradients were added. You know, it's not supposed to be a painting necessarily, but Marte Gracia does a good job. You can still see the line work that Pepe Larraz has. And the writer, Jed MacKay, does a few very clever things in this. Doctor Strange goes to Doctor Doom for help because they're running out of options on how to solve this problem. And Doctor Doom's like, oh yeah, I anticipated that this could happen someday. Doctor Doom has always been really smart and really prepared. He thinks too highly of himself, but it actually makes sense. It actually makes sense. And Doctor Doom's like, yeah, no, I've got a plan to stop this and, like, you know, take down the Dark Force. All it means is I need to have the mantle of Sorcerer Supreme. Now, Doctor Doom has always been a scientific-based villain, right? He's Reed Richards' opposite. But from the beginning, he's also dabbled in the occult. He's never been a sorcerer on the level of Doctor Strange. But boy, I'll tell you guys, one of the best Doctor Strange stories out there is also a great Doctor Doom story. It's called Triumph and Torment. It's a one-shot. I want to say Roger Stern wrote it. I'd have to double check on that. But it involves, a contest with all the sort of sorcerers and warlocks and magic people in the world. And the runner-up gets to have sort of one favor granted by the winner. The runner-up gets, and Doctor Doom just barely hears the invitation. He participates through a lot of treachery. He's the runner-up. And the favor he asks of Doctor Strange in that story is to help him go to hell and save his mother's soul from Mephisto. That has always been one of Doctor Doom's driving motivations, to save his mother, who was condemned to hell by like an evil deal. I love that story, showing like Doctor Doom's motivations and the extent that Doctor Strange is willing to go to be honorable. Great story, folks. So good. Anyway, so it's fun to see that. Another little twist in this that I liked is so the heroes know they need help, okay? And what's left of Moon Knight's Midnight Mission is basically just Tigra and I forget the name of like this other Fist of Khonshu, but there's a second one. What was his name? I haven't been reading all of the Moon Knight stuff. But okay, so they go to break into a vault in Asgard, right? How are you going to break into a vault there? Like, these are just street level superheroes, right? How are you going to do that? Well, they get somebody that's a criminal with Asgardian powers. The Wrecker. His enchanted crowbar. That's part of his history. That's where he got his powers, is from Asgardians. He could potentially break into that vault. I don't want to give away everything, but this is the penultimate issue, and it does involve the tide slightly turning in Heroes' favor, as they've been like totally overwhelmed for a while, with a ton of dead Moon Knights coming to aid the world. That's kind of fun. I also love the Wrecking Crew. Dumb, but extremely powerful. Extremely powerful. Hunter's Moon. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you. Yes. So anyway, this has a bunch of turns. I won't call them twists that like change our... well, maybe the Blade one is a little bit of a twist, but I'm not giving away everything. And it builds on itself in an organic way. I like this. I thought this was a fun adventure comic that used powers in unique ways. And if you're dealing with superheroes, that's what you need to do, is find ways to make their powers like the only one that can solve that problem, you know? And I think that that's really good. So overall, I've kind of enjoyed this. And like was said earlier, who said that? Was that Sean? Yeah. Pepe Larraz's art is worth it regardless of story. I totally agree. This is some great artwork, folks. So you're going to have fun no matter what, just looking at the artwork. I mean, think of like how much time, like this you glance at, right? This establishing shot here. You glance at this. This is New York, obviously enshrouded in darkness. And we're looking specifically at Central Park. And this huge structure here is like a demonic temple that's been transported from old Atlantis, Namor's kingdom. And look at that. Like, that must have taken a while for Pepe to like map out like the perspective on all of these buildings and have some detail on Central Park, but also have a structure that's just breaking out, and then just it's all at nighttime. So how do you use like, you know, the dark areas and the light areas to properly highlight things? I mean, you basically have some fire here, and I think that Marte Gracia adds to that page by using those red fires. So it's just this huge dark temple that has been transported to the middle of Central Park. Sticks out like a sore thumb. Very fun. What else? I'll go ahead and talk about Animal Pound. just to recap, Animal Pound is essentially a modern day reimagining of the ideas behind Animal Farm by George Orwell. But it's not a one-for-one, okay? You can't like list, oh, this character was that pig, and it's not quite that one-for-one, but it takes the idea of it, okay? It takes the idea of it. It takes place in a pound, first of all, instead of a farm. So we've got dogs, cats, and rabbits. 3 creatures that normally don't get along at all, but would all be in an animal pound. They freed themselves in issue 1, and they form a government in issues 2 and 3, where they're trying to be fair to each other. But the end of issue 3, things went bad when like sort of a really dumb but popular dog named Piggy, he got elected president, and one day he just kills a rabbit. They're all supposed to treat each other as equals, but Piggy just, in front of everybody, he just kills and eats a rabbit, and like then just turns it to like a political stump speech, saying like everybody comes to hear him explain himself, and there he is talking to everyone, and this is the stuff he says. I'll just read a piece of it. Hello, everybody. Look at everyone out there. So many of you. Wow. Isn't that amazing? It seems like we've been so divided here. We are together, all of us. Wow. They said it couldn't be done. And they said only I could do this. I told them I could. And we all see they were right. I was right. Look at you. Look at what I did. And here we are. And we're only at the beginning. Yes, we are. You going to tell me that isn't meant to sort of emulate a certain politician's speech patterns? I think it is. So, you know, some people's mileage may vary if they think that that's too overtly political. But essentially what's important is that you've got a dumber guy that is still able to manipulate the public into supporting him. And there are some cats and dogs that have very different opinions. He comes up with the premise or the slogan, "We are animals, let's be animals again." And then what's interesting is Madame Fifi was one of the cats that really started this revolution. And she looks out into the crowd of who's listening to Piggy, and it isn't just dogs. There are cats and rabbits that are still showing up to listen to him. Why would that be? Why would that be? I don't know. There's still like an issue to go to explain what's coming. But it is disturbing to see like what started as this like very noble idea for a democracy and letting these animals govern themselves has just sort of like fallen into like so easily sort of like slipped into a broken system where not everybody is treated equally. Great artwork, by the way, by Peter Gross. To be able to make these animals look so realistic but still have, you know, emotions, because it's not a cartoon like Feral, but you know, like you have like Hercules the cat, like really arching back to seem angry there. That's a clever bit of storytelling. There's a close-up sometimes of characters that like just slightly exaggerate a mood. I'm trying to find a good example. Okay, so here's a close-up of Madame Fifi sort of being nervous. And I think Peter Gross has just slightly added like an eyebrow arch, like up a little to indicate like scared. It looks better on the page. This isn't a fun story, though. I mean, because what's the premise about it? The premise is about how easily, you know, we can lose our government if we don't sort of monitor it and defend it. And more clever people than me can make those political interpretations. But at its core, you know, this is a tragedy. This is a tragedy. So this isn't going to be a fun comic to read. This is about how easily we can lose something that we value. And that's an important just reminder if we even just have that vague idea in the back of our head to like think forward and think about like what we want to protect ultimately and how best to do that and make smart decisions. That's a fair message. Some dogs and cats have more personality than a lot of humans. I think that can be true. I think that we can also sometimes put or project a personality on my cat, on our pets. I think I do that with my cats. I think I project a personality that might not be there, but who knows? I think that this book is hilarious. Very different book. Grommets, issue 2 of 7. Very personal story by writers Rick Remender and Brian Posehn that envisions them if they had met as teenagers. They met as adults in real life and became friends, but they were both into skating. And this envisions them as teenagers, just skating around and being friends and stuff like that. So let me see. That's a good example. Come on, focus. That's Rick, and that's Brian Posehn. And all I'll say is, like, all the stuff that Brian says in this, I literally hear in Brian's super deep voice. Maybe you've seen him in TV shows or movies and certainly stand up. Maybe you haven't, but if you have, Brian has a unique voice, and it really comes across in this. And it's just, two guys in the 80s just sort of finding their friends and finding their place in skating culture. The artwork by Brett Parsons is fantastic. In my opinion, I think that this stuff looks like some of the best stuff you would see in like classic Mad magazine, like really emotive characters, but also like really good details on anything realistic. There's lots of energy, like a cartoony animatedness to moves, but it's still also, grounded enough that it's realistic. I didn't know about Brett Parsons before this, but it's great. Look at these two like just sort of hillbilly truckers that get mad at the skaters and chase them down. That's pretty expressive. It's cartoony, but in the best ways possible. Is the United States a broken system? That's a big question. I sure as hell hope not. But it's always, like, how could you even tell in the moment? You can only look at these things in retrospect. Like, I might be able to give an opinion on what America was in the 50s and 60s for good or bad, but in the moment, I can go with my best guess and like try to support what I believe in, but I don't know if it's broken or not. Maybe we'll know in 20, 30 years. I hope not. Anyway, it's this is just a great comic. Look, it's specifically going to speak to a few people. Gen X, it'll speak to you because this is about a time from our childhood. People that like comedy and humor, you'll like it too. And if you're into skating culture at all, you'll like that. One thing that amused me, speaking about like the culture, is this is told in retrospect. Like this is a shot of Rick waking up in his bedroom, and let's just say comic book Rick has excellent taste. I mean, look, we've got a Herb Trimpe Hulk poster. We've got Thrashin' Magazine, Dead Kennedys poster, Black Flag. We've got a Tony Hawk skateboard. This is a kid that has excellent taste in every bit of music and culture at the time. Suicidal Tendencies, Circle Jerks. Maybe he did have that perfect taste as a kid. Maybe he did. I do believe these are all things that he loved. Did he have all of them at once? I don't know. You might respectfully disagree. Really? I feel like that's who I get a vibe for when I look at Brett Parsons. I feel like I look at this and I remember guys like Jack. Hold on. Now I'm blanking on names. I'm bad at that. Grommets is really fun. Grommets is really cool. I don't know the exact year this takes place in, to be fair. I don't know. Maybe it would have to be like late 80s, I think. I don't know. Whenever Kentucky Fried Chicken had that logo instead of just saying KFC, and 7-Eleven looked like that, I'd say that's mid 80s. I don't know. Yes. Thank you, Andy. I look at Brett Parsons and I get a Jack Davis vibe. And by the way, that is one of the best compliments I can give, because Jack Davis was outstanding. Just an outstanding artist. A lot of people will remember Jack Davis mostly for Mad. They might remember him for things like movie posters and album covers, because he did stuff like that. Didn't he do, I think, It's a Mad World? I'm pretty sure that was one he did that was pretty famous. But he also did do a lot of the EC horror comics in the 50s. Yeah, that's who I see as Jack Davis. 70s and mid 80s. Yeah, so it was probably like early to mid 80s is when this is set. It's not super important to the story. It's more just like early era Gen X history. Time Magazine. Did he do some Time Magazine? Probably. Jack Davis was awesome. Just awesome. And I get a lot of really good vibes. And look, yeah, I mean, I haven't seen a lot by Brett Parson, but I think he's really expressive in the best ways possible. And look at this. This is like 3 different blonde teenage girls that skate, but, you know, I think that they each look pretty different beyond just hairstyles. I think if you actually like really look at it, they do have their eyes and nose and even lips drawn a little differently. They've got slightly different body types, even though they're all sort of skaters. That's not easy. That's not easy to make some subtle differences, especially with whatever your style is and on a monthly deadline. It's tricky to differentiate people. I think so. I think Jack Davis is just incredible. Oh, I'm sure I will do one at some point. You know, I know my friend Tony Moore got a Jack Davis commission. His wife hired Jack Davis before he passed to do something for Tony, and I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. But now that I think of it, Rick Remender hired Jack Davis to do a cover for Fear Agent. So I bet that, like, I mean, that's Rick's tastes, right? Like, he would of course be drawn to somebody like Brett Parson, knowing that he loves Jack Davis. Jack Davis tropes, yes. Yeah, I could see some of that. That's true. I mean, Jamie Hewlett is definitely, like, especially if you look at like Tank Girl type stuff, even Gorillas, now that I think of it, there's a little bit of a sort of skater culture in there, and yeah, there's some similarities there. You're right. That's a good point. Is there anything else I should talk about? I'll be honest, I don't have a lot to say because I want to like the entire Ultimate line, and I do like writer Brian Hill. I don't have anything bad to say about the artist, but I'm not really feeling Ultimate Black Panther. I don't know. Maybe it's just not for me, and that's fair. There's a lot of mythology being introduced here with, like, you know, Black Panther, you know, new king of Wakanda. He's got like this mysterious sect called the Vodou Khan that can, like, you know, advise him, but they have their own mysterious ways. There's the Dora Milaje. There's, you know, the new sort of terrorist heroes, essentially, of Storm and Killmonger. Storm and Killmonger are like allied now with Black Panther, but they've been, like, I only say terrorists because they're resisting the control of Africa by the literal gods Ra and Khonshu, who are bad guys in this. You know, Khonshu in Marvel Comics is, you know, the Moon Knight god, and then Ra is just the god of the sun. So the gods of the sun and the moon, essentially. It's okay, you know. There's some there's some fun action and stuff. It's not bad. It's just it feels like there's a lot of world building going on, and I feel like if the writer was just a little more patient, and some of that should come from like encouragement from editorial staff that like, hey, we're in this for the long haul. Take your time to build all this lore and mythology out. But I'd love to focus a lot more on getting to know the main characters and focusing on the big plot. And so far it's a lot of like investigating that's taking just a lot of explanation of different factions and different powers and different things about like vibranium and this new substance that's sort of like vibranium for the flesh. It's hard to describe. There's just a lot. And I don't feel like the story's moving forward at a fast enough pace to interest me, and it isn't giving me a definition of exactly who this take on Black Panther is. So I'll say like, okay, I'll compare it to some of the other books. Amazing, Ultimate Spider-Man. Ultimate Spider-Man, I would also say, is pretty decompressed. The story isn't necessarily going fast, but I do like how much I'm getting to know Peter Parker in this, and it's a different version of Peter Parker. He's a family man. He's coming across these responsibilities late in life. So there's some key differences that I need to know to understand who that character is and who his supporting cast is. And I would be up for like learning that about Black Panther. That's not an easy task, by the way. Make a king relatable as a main character. That's a huge position of responsibility and privilege in a lot of ways. How do you make that relatable? That's a tough nut to crack. Don't get me wrong. But because they're introducing so many sort of factions and technology and supporting cast, it's sort of overwhelming. I either need the story to move fast plot-wise so that I've got like lots of action and I'm just enjoying the ride, or if you're going to go slow, give me a lot of character work. And I'm not quite getting either. That's sort of my argument, is that this take on Ultimate Spider-Man is definitely more of a character piece for now anyway, than, a fast-paced action adventure story or true, gritty crime drama. It's not quite like that. What else can I talk about? You know what I'll talk about? I'll talk about Void Rivals. Some very interesting stuff being done. This is one of the issues that I've really, really enjoyed. Every once in a while, like Robert Kirkman writes an issue that reminds me why I got excited about him in the first place, like over 25 years ago now. Jesus, he's been working in comics a long time now. And sometimes I feel like his characters can talk a little bit too similarly. I feel like when he wants to have somebody deliver exposition in a meaningful way, that character just all of a sudden doesn't use contractions, and I just go like, oh, they sound too similar. But this one's fun. The two main characters have met Springer, an Autobot that's been trapped on their planet for a long time. And while none of them have the full story of what's going on their planet, they've got two warring alien factions on the same planet, and now we've got a Transformer. We start to piece together certain little things. Springer is stunned by these gems that the characters have always had on their heads. He's like, why do you have an Energon port? Energon port? Energon is the fuel that Transformers run on. Why would these organic beings have an Energon port? Well, Springer gives the wounded Solila some Energon, and it heals her up and she glows. Why would these characters have the ability to accept the same fuel source as Transformers? And he also says, he's been trapped in like the wastelands on this ring world for about 100 years. And he's finding that the planet, the ring itself, the planet, which is a ring, like in Halo, more or less, it's actually like a machine designed to generate Energon. In other words, there has been stuff hidden from the everyday citizen on this planet that ties it in some way, which we don't know yet, to Cybertron. So there's some interesting mythology being dropped in this issue. Pretenders hide the Transformers inside. Energon port. Oh, hey! First of all, name's Robert, not Bobby. And I write a little book called Void Rivals. Be much obliged if you took a look at it. I think it's a pretty damn good book. Has anybody listened to Robert on, TV or panels? I feel like that's a damn good impression. I would love to hear if Robert thinks I'm doing a good impression or if he's going to punch me the next time we see each other. I had a random idea like around issue 2 or so of Void Rivals. And it's a long shot. It's a super long shot. But in Transformers toys and, the comics and even the TV show, primarily the Japanese seasons that continued the original Generation 1 cartoon, there were characters that were like human-sized, sometimes actual humans, sometimes alien, depending on the continuity and everything, that would get upgraded with Cybertronian technology and become headmasters, brain masters, target masters, power masters. Those were engines. In other words, they could transform and power up or help operate Transformers. To be fair, in the Japanese cartoon, the headmasters, the little guys that transformed into a head, they were like a person and then they transform into a head. They were just tiny Transformers and the bodies were called Transtectors. They were sort of like machines that they could just operate. They were always Transformers. But there have been other versions where those have been aliens or humans. And there's a part of me that wondered if someday some of the characters in Void Rivals could become those characters. Are these guys going to become, say, Lord Zarek, the head of Scorponok? Or are they going to become Blowpipe, the gun for Trigger Happy? I don't know if I have those names right. But I wonder. There's a part of me that wonders, could Void Rivals eventually connect in that way? I don't know. Solila, while she's injured, is in like this sort of like void. There's just sort of like an energy version of her, and she's talking to an entity called Zerta. And later in this, Springer talks about how there was like a lost Autobot leader at one point called Zerta Trion. Well, that sounds a lot like Alpha Trion, the guy that basically taught Orion Pax and helped him become Optimus Prime. So I don't know. They're dropping some mythology. I don't know how it connects. I'm excited to find out. But these are tantalizing little teases. There are tantalizing teases. Let's see. In before Cobra supervillains have energy ports. I don't know what that means. Sorry. In before. I don't know. So I liked it. I think that the art by Lorenzo De Felici is always great. And this one actually got me with some of the lore. I also like that Springer had a very hard time beating one of these alien guys who's a what would I call him? He's like a bounty hunter for the government. And Springer has a very hard time beating him. And even when he beats him, the bad guy still sort of gets away, which is pretty amazing. Yeah, it's slowly coming together. The end of Cobra Commander ended with the weird mutant people of Cobra Law going out into space to destroy Cybertron because they find mechanical stuff to be an affront to their society. So at some point, this huge army of Cobra Law is either going to show up in Void Rivals or on Cybertron and Transformers. So that's a connection that's coming up. Did I really? Oh my God. I can't believe that I remember something like that, because I remember a lot of G.I. Joe names. I don't necessarily remember as many Transformer names. That really amuses the hell out of me that I can remember late era G1 Transformers like that. I'm sorry. That really cracks me up that I know something like that. Because I definitely would not be able to name all of the Target Masters. But that's so funny. In before is an internet term when one says something before it manages to happen. Oh, I didn't know that. I did not know that. Huh. Okay. Anyway, there's a lot of there have been a lot of Transformers and G.I. Joe toys and new characters created for the cartoons and comics that these new Energon universe comics can take advantage of, as well as add new things and find ways to remix it because they know from the beginning where some of the mythology goes. Whereas originally it was a little more patchwork and sort of made up as it went along. But if you can clean that up with hindsight, it fits together pretty damn well. I think that I need to probably wrap up the show in a sec. I'll just say if I liked it or not. I liked Redcoat number 3 very much. Funny comic that's also a great adventure. It's got this guy who was a Redcoat. His name is Simon Pure. He was basically a mercenary, but he's a dummy and he's not very noble. He's not outright villainous. He's just sort of a scumbag. And he accidentally became immortal when some people back in 1776 were planning to make Benjamin Franklin immortal. He stumbled in and accidentally became immortal himself. But now, like we're about 75 years later, and he and Albert Einstein as a child and Benedict Arnold are all coming across, a cult that has access to magic, and they want to kill Simon Pure. It's a fun bit of jamming in all sorts of weird mythology and mixing up historical figures in a way that definitely didn't happen, but it's pretty fun. Basically, Simon's sidekick is Albert Einstein, and his frenemy is Benedict Arnold, who, Simon is still just like poor and like stumbles day to day, just being like hungry and like scrounging up some money. But Benedict Arnold is also immortal, and he has been much more clever investing his money and just giving himself a new name. So he's not like, nobody knows that he's like, a guy that betrayed America, was like America's first traitor. He's just sort of the scumbag frenemy of Simon. If it ever gets a movie, Guy Ritchie should direct it. Okay, I could sort of see that. Let's see. Oh my God, the show's been going a while. You guys probably want to get to bed or eat. I want to eat. Spectacular Spider-Man. Spectacular Spider-Man. This is fun. Starts explaining what's been happening with Miles and Peter. Some of the better art that I've seen by Humberto Ramos. And it explains who the villains of this piece are. And it's a weird team up that I absolutely love. It's a team up of Arcade and Mentallo. It does help explain the weirdness that's been going on here, and them together, they're the psychic powers and the robotic gizmos and stuff have really messed up a lot of the world. It makes sense what they're trying to do, and they're basically also able to trick Peter and Miles into battling one another because they each think the other is a robot duplicate. That's a fun matchup. Superior Spider-Man wraps up sort of a second take of Otto Octavius on maybe a slow path of growth to becoming a better person. Also wipes out a big chunk of his memory, so that it's a little tragic. He loses his memories of loving and taking care of Anna Maria Marconi, but he also it's good. Anyway, Blood Squad 7. Folks, this is a fascinating look at the shared image universe it sort of retcons things to say that instead of Youngblood, Blood Squad 7 was the superhero team. And so, for instance, goes back to 1992, and we see Savage Dragon battling Blockhead instead of who was Rob Liefeld's Big Rock, Bad Rock. So there's a few retcons in here, but basically it involves, in the modern day, the government running a Blood Squad 7 team and talking about how different that is from 30 years ago. 30 years ago, when they were sort of presented as celebrity superheroes. It's a really fun political thriller superhero book, but also a meta commentary on how comics have changed in 30 years. Pretty good premise, right? And the penultimate issue of No One by hey kitty, by writers Kyle Higgins and Brian Buccellato. Great art by Geraldo Borges. Glad to see him back. In this world, No One is sort of a vigilante, right? But the main story is more about uncovering not just who No One is, but also who a vigilante murderer is. And we still don't know, but there's a lot of characters in this book that represent a lot of different factions. We've got police, we've got reporters, we've got government officials, and we've got, well, I was going to say like news commentators, but in a way that like sort of fits in with the news media that I was talking about earlier. So there is some good action stuff in this with No One getting involved and sort of like saving people from some riots, because in this, the government in Pittsburgh, it's Philadelphia. In Philadelphia, have passed a law that allows you to defend yourself with firearms proactively. So as soon as that law has been passed, a couple people are getting shot, and people, it was a very narrowly passed bill, so people are losing their shit over it. Riots are happening. There's still a killer out there, and we don't know who No One is yet. We don't know who No One is. We don't know who the killer is. We're going to find it all out next week. So it has been a fantastic superhero vigilante mystery. It's been a mystery. And the coolest part, in my opinion, about this book, folks, I'm just going to like recommend it again. At the end, there is a QR code, or you can just look this up. There is a podcast called Who is No One, and it's told from the perspective of the reporter characters in this, voiced by Rachel Lee Cook and Patton Oswalt. And it has a bunch of other great voice actors playing some of the characters in this book as like, getting interviewed. We've got Todd Stashwick, Lauren Lester, and Yuri Lowenthal. The podcast is such an amazing component of this book. Really fits together well. You don't have to listen to the podcast, but if you do, you'll get a little bit more. It's really cool. Thank you for the super chat. Oh yeah, hi Kitty. I've definitely read Jack Staff by Paul Grist. I think Paul Grist is great. I feel like I haven't seen anything by Paul in a while, but I really love that clean, pared down style. Jack Staff was a really fun comic. Yeah, really fun. I like that a lot. No, I haven't thought about reaching out to Craig Thompson, but I would certainly be interested in that. Man, I remember meeting Craig several times back in that first year when Blankets came out. I loved Blankets. Hey, look, we've got a guest. Oh, you don't want to be seen? Okay. For a minute, I thought that my cat might make an appearance. It's been a big commitment to holding back on the mystery. I've got my guesses, but I don't feel confident about any of them yet. I don't know. Thanks, Jack. You gonna knock over some of my stuff? Thanks, bud. I guess it's as good a time to wrap up the show as any, so that I can get my cat down off the shelf up there, and get some food, because it's getting late here. Oh, both cats are down here now. We've got Jack up there and Lily over here. Jack and Lily. Yeah, I agree. Jack Staff does have that Lean Claire art style that was popularized in books like Tintin. I do see some bande dessinée in that. That's true. Hey, kitties. You want to get down? We'll see. All right, folks. So, like I say, let me plug some stuff. On this channel, I'm really proud of the latest episode Jim and I did of Trash Movie Bonanza. We talk about 2 Hammer horror flicks. That was a production studio in England that made really cool horror movies from like the 50s through the 70s. And we each choose a vampire movie that has interesting history. Jim's is based on the first vampire story, Carmilla, which came out 25 years before Dracula. And mine is about a guy named Captain Kronos, a vampire hunter that I think is awesome. He's just like so cool. It's basically a superhero. So anyway, I really recommend that. I have recorded the latest comic tropes. It's about an artist that I absolutely love, an artist that was super influential in getting me into comics. I cannot wait to finish editing that. I think I've got all of Ginseng Roots as individual issues. I would love a collected edition. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I need to plug for myself. No, I don't think so. I don't think I do. Oh, thanks for the other super chat. No, I've never met John Byrne, actually. Now that you mentioned that, that's interesting. I've at least seen a lot of the major creators that have lived during my lifetime. I haven't met them all, but I've at least seen them up close, like at a convention. But now that I think of it, I don't think I've ever been to a convention that has had John Byrne. But we've got some really fun stuff coming up on Trash Movie Bonanza. I've got some amazing ideas, in my opinion, for some comic tropes episodes, foreign, domestic. I think there's some true crime involving comics that I think I want to do as more of a storytelling episode of just me mostly talking to the camera, the occasional footage, but like some true crime stuff that I think is really compelling. And I don't think you'd come across it anywhere else, because who else is going to talk about these comic book stories? And then on this channel, like, keep in mind, this month, the end of it, San Diego Comic-Con. That's pretty much the single event where the most comic book news will drop all at once. So that Monday after Comic-Con is probably going to just be tons of news, tons and tons of news. So anyway, okay, Kitty. Kitty's asking me to come play with them, so I'm going to take off and have some dinner. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you watching. Take care. Keep reading comics.